All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. And I just want to say hello to everyone and hello to King Xerxes, my guest for tonight. He's going to be joining me in a review of another Darth Dawkins videos. King Xerxes, Xerxes, you want to introduce yourself and say whatever you want, I guess?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Jefferson tried to get me on his stream the day he did a review of my interaction with Darth, and unfortunately, I am technologically illiterate, and I did not know how to check my ads on YouTube. But fortunately, he has my Discord information now, and so he was able to contact me there, and I saw it within the nick of time. He messaged me at like 4 o'clock, 4:30. It's like, hey, you want to do this? It starts at 6, and I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And I responded at 5:40.
That's not entirely your fault because I found out later on that what was happening is I was putting the at and then the person's name in, the username, your YouTube channel name, into the description set up in on the StreamYard side of things and didn't realize, I think it was after you had said you missed it, that's broken on StreamYard. That when you type that in, it doesn't work. You have to go into YouTube and edit that into the title or into your description in order for that linking to actually kick off.
Yeah,
And for you to, yeah. So
somebody already has the King Xerxes handle. Mine is King Xerxes YT with the capital YT.
yeah, and I think I used that one. That's what I thought I was plugging in, but because I put it in on the StreamYard side of things and didn't go in and edit it in the YouTube setup in the background, it didn't actually connect the link. So it's just text. It would never have sent you the. I don't know that maybe it did. Did it actually send you like a notification saying, "Hey, somebody
Nope.
mentioned"? Okay, yeah, I think that was on StreamYard.
Somebody else is there's a guy who has like the Reason Archive. It's a tiny little YouTube channel, and he tends to mirror a lot of my videos like completely. But he gives me credit for it in the description, and he links to my channel, so I don't mind. But I didn't know that he was doing that, and then he added me in one of them, and it popped up, and I watched it. And I'm like, what the fuck? This is just my video. There's no like added anything. It's just my video, and he mirrored it completely. He's done this with a couple of your streams as well. You should look up his YouTube channel. It's very small. It's only got a couple hundred subscribers.
That's kind of weird. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of flattered and a little miffed. I don't know. Sorry. If he's watching, yeah, take those down or pay me money. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I guess. What?
Bite
No,
Me
go ahead.
TJ said something in the comments I want to respond to.
Go ahead.
He says giving apologists or apologist repeaters like Darth rewards them. Well, giving them the opportunity to debate rewards them, permitting them to put forth deliberately dishonest arguments. Well, I mean, yeah, when you have dishonest people, you want them to expose themselves, and some people may not be entirely aware of the tricks that are being played in these dialogues, which is why it's important to go through and sort of dissect them. And it helps the average person who understands there's a trick being played on them, but they don't know exactly how. Like when you're watching a magic show, you understand there's some sort of illusion or trick that's happening. You're not actually observing bins in the laws of reality, but you don't know how the trick is being done. And until you can figure that out, you if you debate anybody on the magic, then they win by default because like, oh, you don't have an explanation for how it's done, so therefore you lose. So if you don't have counter arguments to this stuff and you run into these kinds of people, you can be non-masochistic and just not engage with them at all, sure. But if you do choose to engage, and mostly for the benefit of the audience, not the person you're talking to, it's nice to be able to know how to take their arguments away.
Yeah, and my response to that is, I mean, I kind of agree with TJ a little bit on this. Like, I can see both points on this, and which is why I don't really engage. I don't worry about ever getting the opportunity to engage in an actual, even a discussion with Darth Dawkins because he won't have one, and because he's just flagrantly dishonest. So I never worry.
Oh yeah,
I like to sit from in the distance. I watch his exchanges with others, and I snipe him from here. That's my thing because. I'm a cowardly spatchcock. Thanks for this one. Thanks for the super chat, Michael. Xerxes, the only voice more buttery than Seth Andrews. You have a fan, Xerxes. Thank you for that super chat, Michael.
Yeah, I actually did a podcast with Michael, a while back.
Yeah, he said he did.
Yeah, that is a fun video, George. Or Gears Garage is what his name is. I read that as George. I don't know why, but that is a funny video. I agree. And to answer the other question about it, no, it is not hand drawn. It is an AI generated image by a professional graphic designer who is retired and a subscriber to my YouTube channel. Shout out to Jake Nice, and also big shout out to Diego, because I kid you not, he bought me a $1,500 laptop, and it'll be here on
Holy
Thursday
sh-
to replace my current one. Yeah.
holy
So I'm
shit.
going to make him a special dedicated video once that comes in, because right now this computer is literally hanging on by a thread. It is completely the screen is detached from the base entirely, and it is only there's like a little cable that connects the screen to the base so that it still functions. But I have to prop up the screen because it won't sit up by itself. There's nothing. There's the hinges are completely broken.
Been there. I've had rigs like that. Um, so with that with that being said, not a lot of context to this one. This one got recommended to me in my YouTube string of things. I've met Atheist Junior before online. I've seen him over at Atheist Answers in Atheism and a few other places. It seems like a pretty bright kid. He's a younger guy. I'm not sure. I haven't really had like a one-on-one conversation with him, but he apparently had this conversation with Darth Dawkins back in the in Darth Dawkins' politics room. And so I started listening to it. I've made it about 7 minutes into it, and it's already just loaded with, kind of Darth's usual missteps and equivocations and prevarications. And Xerxes was nice enough to join me for this one, so we're going to get into this one. But first, I wanted to ask, since he's here, and we did touch on this briefly right before we went live. Xerxes, you'd mentioned something that he, because I wasn't sure about this. I watched the Clubhouse Debates video where it shows Darth kind of flaming out and having his little fit in somebody's room over on Discord, and then Tom Rabbit posted his own edited version of that, I think, earlier yesterday. So
Yeah.
has he just rage quit both of his rooms?
Okay, so he was in the two big servers, Politics and Religion, which is my home server, and Politics. Okay. So he had a room in both of these servers. Now in PNR, he has the Atheist Helpline, and he's also a co-moderator in Christian Apologetics and the Theist Experience. Okay, so all three rooms are basically run by Darth whenever he's there because, he's obsequious little sycophants will let him do whatever he wants.
Sure.
The interaction that I got posted by Tom Rabbit actually took place in the Theist Experience because he was in there that day and there was only like 8 people and no one would join his room and argue with him. And so the other moderators, not Fox and Mole, wanted me to come in there and argue with Darth because they wanted to spark activity. I said, I'm not going in there because he's going to mute me. And they said, if he mutes you, we'll unmute you. Okay. So I joined under the promise that I wouldn't be muted, and it didn't happen for 17 minutes, and then he finally muted me. But the moment that I joined, that room went from 8 to 50 people in a heartbeat. And we started fighting. Daz showed up, Tom Rabbit showed up, everybody was recording it. It was interesting. We never it's funny because he's a precept. His whole thing is like arguing against atheists. And what do we talk about? What is time? Because you
Right.
can't ever get past the foundations of reason with this guy. You can't ever actually have a substantive interaction. It's always about how do you know what you know, and how do you know that you know what you know what you know.
Yeah.
You got to question my very capacity to come to conclusions about the world before we can have a discussion. And it just gets us nowhere. And so that happened, and that burnt the other moderators out. They didn't like him because he muted me, and the room fucking hemorrhaged again. When I left, like most of the other people left in the room too. It went from like 70 people at its max to like 25, and then a bunch of people hemorrhaged in my room and took away attention from theirs. They got irritated, and they kind of like cold-shouldered Darth a little bit, and they quit letting him run over the Theist Experience. And so then he was kind of just relegated to the Atheist Helpline and Christian Apologetics. Well, he got mad at the moderators of PNR, Banshee and Blackout, because they wouldn't ban my friend Jack Burton. And Jack Burton is an admitted troll. He loves to troll and antagonize Darth. And
Jack Burton is a fan of the show, and I am a fan of his.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's
he is an awesome person. He's like a very fun person to interact with, but he was trolling Darth.
I can safely say Jack has never trolled me, so I guess I'm
Yeah.
I'm fine with him.
Well,
But yeah, maybe I don't know. Like I don't normally. I mean, I don't know. I'm accused of being a troll just because I'm kind of an ass. So and I kind of picture Jack Burton as kind of that way. I don't know if he trolls. Like I don't know if he's actually getting up to mischief and
So of all like the admins who like kind of capitulate to Darth, Banshee is probably the best about it because he doesn't give him too much leash. He banned Jack initially, and Jack consented to it, and it was fine. Other people got irritated by it, but then he brought him back a month later in like the end of Halloween, and that pissed off Darth. But he stuck around, and then he got his room in Politics, and so he was just basically trying to like swing his dick around and say, hey, I don't need your server, I can go over here to Politics. So Politics gave him 2 rooms. They gave him the Atheist Helpline, which is in the guest channels section of the VCs. So
Yeah.
that that's a privately owned VC when you enter it. But they also gave him another room that was literally just titled Religion. And they already had a religion room, which was a public room. And they put his religion room in the main public area, okay, of the voice channels. And they titled it Religion, and they titled the public one Religion too. And so he was baiting people into this room under the false pretenses that he wasn't the authority in there, that it was a public channel. And people wisened up to that and got pissed off about it and complained to Doobie. And Doobie finally took it away from him. He ended that religion channel. And Darth threw a hissy fit and left. And so now he's gone from PNR and he's gone from Politics. He left PNR because they wouldn't ban Jack Burton again. And he left Politics because they wouldn't give him 2 rooms.
This all sounds exactly like I imagined. Yeah.
Okay. The reason why is because Darth is an attention whore, and he wasn't getting enough attention in the Atheist Helpline because people knew better than to join that, really. And so what he would do is he would go into other rooms and try to poach, like bait people into his room, and he would do this in mine, because I have my own room in Politics called the Atheist Chat. And he would come in there periodically and antagonize people and try to get them into an argument, and then whenever I would show up, he would bounce and try to poach them over to his room.
Right.
Yep. And so he did that several times, evading me every time I'd show up, because he would go into my room and bait the people that were participating in my room into his room. And then I put a stop to that. I told Square Pusher, who is one of the admins of the Politics server, hey, I want Darth permanently banned from my room. I'm done with him coming in and poaching people and not ever actually sticking around to have a conversation. If he's not willing to engage with me, he's not welcome in my room. Because he bans me from his room all the time. Like I went in there to listen into a friend of mine debate because, she wanted to try. She's a recent deconvert that I helped out of like creationism and whatnot. And she's a new atheist and she wants to try and debate because I've been teaching her how to use counter-apologetic arguments and the flaws in certain theological reasonings. And she wanted to take a stab at Darth Dawkins because she did it before and she wanted to try it again. So I just went in there to listen to her. And the moment I joined, Darth immediately mutes and bans me, so I can't even listen to her interact with him.
Yeah,
and so I'm perma-banned from his room. He won't engage with me. He always calls me a troll. I'm not a troll. I mean, I'm pretty sincere with him. Even when I was arguing with him the first time around, I was pretty sincere with him. But he's just a nasty reprobate, and if he doesn't get the exact amount of attention that he wants, if he doesn't have unquestioning, immediate obedience with his demands and expectations, he gets mad and he throws a bitch fit and he left. And everybody knew at some point he was going to leave because whatever power he's given is never enough. He always wants more. Yeah. Because he's only capable of having engagements with people in an environment where he controls the room absolutely. Yep. If he's ever outside of that little niche, that little power niche, he loses his ass. Like anybody can argue with Darth if he can't mute them because he can't keep them on the dialogue tree. He has to actually engage their real position. He can't ask them these loaded yes and no questions and funnel them down a dialogue tree and like saddle them with beliefs they don't hold because they answered a false dichotomy the wrong way. He can't do that to them. And so He can't engage with them that way. This is why he left Pal Talk, because on Pal Talk, only one person is allowed on the mic at a time. And after 2.5 minutes, you get down and the next person in line gets up. So he wasn't allowed to mute and control the conversation.
It must have been a nightmare for him.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
People had like 2.5 minute uninterrupted speech time to argue with him. And so, yeah, no, he had no leeway on Pal Talk at all. And that's when he ventured off and became famous because of Tom Rabbit and the rest of them. And now he has this fucking entourage that follows him around and gives him this aura of bringing in activity. But he doesn't spawn any new people. All he does is bring the people that are already there to watch the shit show. That's all he does.
And then he actively blocks a bunch of us so we don't because that's the thing. Like what you said, like as soon as you got into that room, it automatically attracted people because it's Darth versus you, right? So like it would be interesting, and I'd be interested in talking to some of the guys that own those servers to just be like, hey, did any of you guys ever think to ask Darth? Because I'm thinking maybe it occurred to one of them, whether or not they broached the subject, just like, okay, Darth, you want a room in here? Fine. But here's what we want you to do. You're saying that if we give you A, B, and C, you're going to bring X amount of attention to the server. And while that may be true, the fact of the matter is you don't. So what we want from you is at least like twice a month, or maybe even just once a month. You agree to some kind of moderated, third-party moderated discussion in your room, and you bring in somebody, somebody else that's well known, that's an opponent, and you agree to have a conversation with them for an hour, let's say. That will bring people into the server. I'm wondering if they even bothered to establish that kind of quid pro quo, because it seems to me like anytime he complains about it, it's like, here's what I bring to the table, and it's lots and lots of Darth and all the attention that Darth deserves, and so I deserve all the power to leave your server a barren wreck when I server mute everyone. Like, all he is a logistical nightmare for them. You know what I mean? Because he keeps dropping people, so they're constantly running back to the DMing the owners to be like, yeah, Darth kicked me again. Can you let me back in? Can you send me a link and get me back into the server? He's more trouble than he's worth, I think.
Well, the
and
servers
Daisy,
have that problem, but like with politics and PNR, they're too big to fail. I mean, politics is what, 15,000 people, or no, PNR has 15,000 people. Politics is like 60,000. Like, they were not struggling for activity before Darth, and they're not struggling for activity after Darth. Really,
yeah,
I mean, the activity levels have not changed all that much. Darth just gives people something to hate, gives them something to talk about, right?
yeah.
A couple people were asking me questions in the comments. I don't know if you want me to respond or not.
I just want to point this. Daisy was like, I saw him do that on Speakeasy the other day. Is Speakeasy another app?
No, Speakeasy is a voice channel run by God420 in the PNR channel in the server.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so I hang out there mostly because my room, Counter Apologetics, that's only active when I'm actually debating people. If I want to just shoot the bull and talk, I don't go in there. I try to keep that as like a sanctorum for engagement, because if, like, I kid you not, every time I join Counter Apologetics, and this does get annoying sometimes, like I'm trying to have like a conversation with somebody, like a one-on-one convo or debate, like 20 people join and start interacting, because they want to get in on this. They see that I'm in there, they know that I'm debating, and they just funnel in there, and it just spikes. And it's nice to have activity, but like the way that I argue with people, the way I interact with people, it's much better if it's one-on-one, and you can kind of flow through their reasonings without a bunch of interruptions and derailments. Darth, on the other hand, is an attention whore. He does it for the audience. I do it for the person I'm engaging with.
I just wanted a Hogtie writes Jefferson Spatchcock, read my comment or I'll quit the fucking server. I read your comment, Hogtie. There, you happy?
John Rapp asked me something about, he heard a stream where in the middle of Darth's filibusters, he ordered me to be sent down. Was this like a StreamYard stream, or was it a stream of him in a Discord conversation? Because if it was a stream of him in a Discord conversation, then yeah, probably I may have joined, and then he asked me immediately to be booted, because every time I join, the audience antagonizes him into engaging with me.
Yeah,
and then he has to expose himself as a bitch and not do it. Yeah, he hates that. He hates me putting him in positions where he has to expose himself as a coward, because he won't do it. He won't engage with me. Even when he has absolute power, he knows that I'm squirrely enough to fuck with him, even if he has absolute power. That conversation that he had with me about time, he's like, oh, it's a complete defeater for your position. I mean, go that Daz, Tom Rabbit, and I all posted it. Collectively, it got a little over 8,000 views on all three channels. Okay. Probably in the neighborhood of 600 comments. Not one person was able to figure out where that defeater was. Nope. I'm still looking for it myself. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. I think we were all mystified. KX, I have a little argument now. Jefferson, will you ask Xerxes what he thinks about my new Darth argument? Yeah, her Darth argument is quite morbid. It's up at the beginning of the chats here. What was it? Something like, oh, well, Darth's had a cough for the last few days. Darth has not been seen for the last several days. I think you can kind of follow where this is going. Darth maybe got the COVID.
Yeah, he's old, so like when he dies, he's just gonna fall off the face of the planet. And nobody's gonna know why.
Yeah, I don't want to misrepresent. P1, Darth had the worst cough the last few days. P2, Darth has been missing for the last 3 to 4 days. P3, Darth is hospitalized or dead because he's old and got COVID.
That would be the conclusion, not a premise, Daisy.
Right. Yeah, you need to. But then no way he stays away this long willingly. I don't know. Maybe he's adjusting his blood pressure medication?
No, he is gone from everything. He hasn't been on Clubhouse. He hasn't been on politics or PNR. He hasn't been on any of the minor servers. He has been nowhere. His internet presence has been vacant for the last week.
One thing though, he did try to start something on Twitter.
I don't know. I don't really know if that's him though, but he would fucking last on Twitter. The amount of times he uses slurs against homos or homosexual people and transgender people, like
Yeah,
he calls them slurs all the time.
yeah,
There's no way he would last on Twitter.
Yeah, even if he's trying to get into kind of a higher minded discussion of it, he can't help but use slurs in place of just saying like, "Oh, the LGBTQ community," or
he always uses like homoerotic derogatories with me. He calls me princess. He calls me naughty little boy.
He thinks that people are catcalling him, and it doesn't seem to matter how many times anybody like catcalling is not that, dude. Like, what the hell? Where did you grow up? Where the catcalling is people like shit talking you? Like catcalling is like something else. That's a harassing flirting kind of thing. And he's like, yeah, you guys can quit with the catcalling. Like, is somebody commenting on how tight your skirt is, Darth? I don't get where he picked that up. He's a weirdo.
So before, like, the last one before we jump into the video, but Andrew Cumming, he asked if my target audience was the actual viewers or the person I'm talking to, and it's both, actually. A lot of the conversations in my early YouTube videos are literally one-on-ones. There's nobody else in the room. And the reason I did it that way is because I didn't want my opponent to be under the pressure of having to like put on a good performance. Okay. I don't tell them that I'm recording the videos usually, but now it's known that I'm pretty much always recording because I'm popular now. I have like 1,300 subs. Whoa, I'm famous. But initially, that wasn't the point. The point was to take these arguments and apply them in actual conversations so people can see how that goes, right? So a lot of people have pointed out that I very heavily pull from Scott Clifton. A lot of my arguments are modeled either verbatim after his or in the same vein as his. My arguments against the Kalam, against modal apology, against morality, all of these things are almost identical to him. And that's because Scott is the person who deconverted me when I was struggling with this when I was in college. His was the YouTube channel I watched. I didn't watch Matt Dillahunty or Aaron Raw or any of these other guys. He was the one I watched. He was the first atheist YouTuber I ever watched, and he was his videos are the ones I watched when I was struggling with this myself. And so my thought process about this issue was sculpted by him, and so I echo a lot of his beliefs and points. And I think that his rhetoric is the most effective out of anybody I've ever listened to, and I've put this to the test by using it in actual conversations, which Scott, unfortunately, has never really had the opportunity to do because he's only done a couple of actual debates. Yeah. And, most of them were like video response debates from like the early 2010s. So,
that series that he did with the bouncing back and forth between him and Matt Slick, those are good.
Yeah, that good stuff. And he actually had a full live debate with Matt, and he finally got his piece with William Lane Craig, and William Lane Craig floundered like I knew he would. So it was nice to see that. And I think Scott is very rhetorically persuasive. If you guys don't know who I'm talking about, Scott Clifton, aka Theoretical Bullshit. He looks like the love child of Ryan Reynolds and Chris Pratt. Go watch his videos. He is amazingly persuasive. His arguments are very concise, very eloquent, and he doesn't use a lot of philosophical jargon. So they're easy to understand. They're easy to process for people who are not familiar with higher order philosophy. So that's extremely helpful when you're actually engaging with people that you want to convince. A lot of people in the atheist debate community are more concerned with the technical accuracy or precision of an argument as opposed to its rhetorical power. But I think the real profundity in argumentation is the rhetorical power. The ability to persuade people to your line of thinking, your reasoning is the whole reason, is the purpose of debate and discourse. Argument for argument's sake.
Yeah.
So yes, I would very much like to get through to the people that I engage with, and I very often do. If you guys watch my video, Christians Can't Cope with Contradictions, Classical Thomist, who was one of the people that I was arguing with in there, has conceded that is in fact a contradiction now. And he's revising his thinking process to try and get around that. I'm confident at some point he'll come to the right conclusion. But he's even invited me into discourse that he's had with other people because he's tried to get his other apologist friends to solve this for him, and they can't do it to any level of satisfaction. And if they provide an argument he hasn't heard before, he'll bring me in there, and it's pretty easy to swat him down. I know this contradiction like the back of my hand. I use it all the time. So, yes, I do actively try to persuade people, and I do effectively persuade people. I have the results. I got the receipts, folks.
Yeah, I should. That's one that I haven't checked out yet. That's one video I need to watch from you because I've seen that one. It keeps popping up in my recommendations, but I haven't watched it yet. But I wanted to give a shout out, Justin. Thank you very much for that super chat. Very generous. And this is actually for Xerxes. Darth Dawkins switches between different concepts of time, but falls back to Newtonian, not relativistic, because he requires time concurrency in his argument. This is easily and physically disprovable in a relativistic universe.
I know nothing about cosmology, so I'll take your word for it, buddy.
Yeah. Justin really digs this kind of stuff. I direct message with him on Discord from time to time. He sent me a lot of some very interesting science related YouTube clips and others, and some of the stuff that he sent me on time. I still can't wrap my head around, but I'm willing to concede that you're probably on the right track, Justin, because he's more knowledgeable about that than I am. But in fact, when I reviewed that, when he got to that point, I just thought it was laughable that he was taking you down that road. But that's
like
Darth.
the issue with Darth's concept of time or whatever. Like when he and I were engaging, my objection, because he changed. If you really paid attention to that, you pointed this out. He changed what he was asking me, because he initially asked me, "What is wrong with there being a thing which is foundational and eternal and is a mind?" And I said, "Well, eternal mind seems incoherent to me." And then he flipped it to, "What is wrong with something that's foundational and eternal?"
Yep.
Right, removing the characteristic that I had a problem with, instead of going back to that. But I caught that, and I'm like, well, I don't think there's a problem with that. I think there's a problem with the thing with the mind. And he goes, okay, so why do you think it's a problem with the mind? And I said, because minds, as we understand them, like the entire context in which I can conceive of what you mean by a mind, is a ever progressing, constant, permeating, non-quiescent fluxion of mental content. Okay, it is a perpetual awareness of self. And then he goes, well, that's the human conception of mind. What the fuck are we talking about if not for the human conception? Because you're trying to argue with a human, so why are we not using the human conception? This is, like, Christian apologists, this is not unique to Darth Dawkins. Theologians do this shit all the time. They always try to use analogous words like mind and consciousness and awareness and will. But then the moment that you point out the problems with those concepts in relation to what they're using them for, oh, well, that's a category error.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe the reason why this is such a problem is because the category you're referring to doesn't actually exist, and you keep trying to shoehorn it into existence by definition alone, and that doesn't fucking work. Okay,
Yeah.
so enough
and
of this whole you can't conceive of this because of your feeble human mind. Okay, well, neither can you.
Yeah.
Neither can you.
And yeah, if you're going to go back to that, I mean, how is that indistinguishable from just declaring God to be mysterious? Right, which is something that they complain that other Christians do. Like, oh no, don't cop out with that, because that's basically like tapping out. Like, yeah, well, all right, well, if you started off with this argument, and I try, and then for this, in the sake of charity, they should be at least willing to deal with the fact, like, okay, you presented me with an analogy. That analogy has certain entailments connected to it. And if I talk about these entailments, your analogy starts to break down very quickly. And they're like, oh, okay, well, you're making a category error because I'm not talking about a human mind. I'm talking about a divine mind or some horse shit like that. Like, okay, so then now we're no longer talking about anything that we have a frame of reference for. Cool. So so in order to, you basically, I mean, at that point, they basically just self-destructed their own analogy because you were picking it apart. Like they're taking fire, so they just blow the whole thing up. Like, oh no, now we're talking about something totally different. Like, okay,
if you watch my rules for thee but not for me video, right? They do this. They use these rules of inference, okay, and then when I point out that these rules of inference can be used against their concept, oh well, now all of a sudden rules of inference are no longer valid as a way of evaluating the reasonability of God's existence. Like, what the fuck? You don't get to adopt, like, okay, everything around us seems to be caused, so therefore the universe itself was caused. Well, I mean, if we're going to apply that intuition consistently, well, then that would entail also what God is called. No, God doesn't need to be caused because he plays by a different set of rules for reasons. No, you don't get to do that. You do not get to hijack rules of inference, lines of inquiry, and then change them the moment that you get to your preferred conclusion. No, if you're going to apply them consistently, you have to apply them across the board. And since we do not have a satisfying explanation for them across the board, it would entail that you cannot use these rules of inference to get to God, because God necessarily does not follow these rules of inference by any category, by any metric. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Scott Clifton. You'll find this in his Non-Belief Revisited video. He says that theologians do this all the time. They call us arrogant, or they say that we're doing something inappropriate by demanding that God ought to behave particular ways. But all we're doing is the same thing we're doing. We're extrapolating, we're inferring about the nature of God's character and will and motivations and powers based on our observations. What theologians do is they say, if this is true of the universe, then this must be true of God. All we're doing is the opposite of that. If this is true of God, then this must be true of the universe. But the key difference, is that our version of that inference is verifiable. You can actually examine what is true about the world and conclude what must or must not be true about God, respectively. If P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. Very simple. And that tends to elicit these sorts of how dare you responses. And it's just a complete double standard at play, because they're not interested in actually playing by the rules. Bertrand Russell said this about Thomas Aquinas: Christian first, philosopher second. He is not interested in following the inquiry wherever it may lead, or the evidence where it goes, because he already has the truth, the Catholic faith. And if all of his reasons and arguments supplement that, then for the better. If they don't, all he needs to do is fall back on faith. All these apologists admit this. Frank Turk, William Lane Craig, Joshua Rasmussen, Ed Facer. They say that they were convinced by some personal revelation, or like a witness of the Holy Spirit, and that all these arguments are just supplemental. Okay, well, they didn't convince you. Why the fuck would you expect that they convince us?
Yeah, and if you're gonna if you're gonna play the game, I have a real hard time with this, because if the idea behind this, and I don't mind this from a theological perspective, if it's important enough to engage in the idea of the subjective testimony kind of thing, then they need to own that. But when they get into this, and the weird thing is that you'll see them in different spheres do this. If they're amongst other Christians, I suspect a lot of these apologists and some of the Christian debate bros, among inside baseball, kind of, oh yeah, well, your subjective testimony and your own personal witness and experience and all your own personal experience and feelings about the Holy Spirit, yeah, of course they're important. But as soon as they go out and they're engaging with an atheist, facts don't care about your feelings. You can reason your way to God. It's like, no. Like, most of the people that you talk to, if you're a Christian and you're talking to in a congregation, the ones that are actually bothering to show up once a week, are either feeling something or chasing that feeling, either the memory of it or the promise of it. But they're gunning for something, right? Most, that's how people work. They're going for a hit, a dopamine kick, something, serotonin. They're looking for something, and if they don't get it, they'll leave. And I think that's probably the problem. That's why a lot of them don't go anymore, because it doesn't offer that hit.
Well, let's get into this video. Go ahead and set that up. And to Graham, don't worry about my computer setup. That has already been taken care of. Somebody donated me $1,500 to buy a gaming laptop that has 32 gigabytes of RAM and a 1 terabyte storage drive and like a 350 TXI fucking graphics card and like an i7 core processor. So it's got all the cool shit, and it's way better than this piece of shit Dell Inspiron that I bought 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So it will be here on Thursday. I will have a new computer by Thursday.
Congratulations.
It's my Christmas present.
Yeah, that's very cool. AT2 Productions, to me and you, Xerxes. Which question should I pose to Darth first? Explain the disagreement around when Jesus was born, or ask Darth if he's insane. Repeat same thing, expect different result. Either one of them is going to get you dismissed. So
yeah, you can't argue with Darth about the Bible. Darth is biblically illiterate. I kid you not. I was in a room where I was listening, and he was arguing with some Christian about like the gospel and soteriology, which is the theology of salvation. And the passage of John 3:16 was brought up. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever shall believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Okay. I know the Bible like the back of my hand. I am undefeated in Bible trivia. This is verifiable. You can ask anybody. People often do. They have tested me repeatedly. People have triviaed me to death. I'm undefeated. No, they do not hold a candle. I went against 6 Christians together, beat them like 30-0. Okay. It was bad. Darth was arguing with this guy, and he's like, he tries to like pull one over and like start his stuff. Do you know who said that? And then of course the Christian misinterpreted the question that was being asked and thought where that passage was found, and he said John. And then Darth, of course, laughing maniacally, you don't know shit. No, that was said by Nicodemus. No, he said that was a quote by Nicodemus. No, that was a quote by Jesus to Nicodemus on the rooftop, and I tried to ask him about that, and he muted me.
Yeah. Well, I caught him in one too. It was he was doing something where he was talking about it had something to do with the stoning of Simon or something like that, and he's trying to lay it out like, oh, he said this thing that really just pissed them off. Like it's one of his examples of how he keeps it real, like Simon Martyr kept it real. And it's like, okay, Simon wasn't killed that way, and he wasn't killed for the reasons that you thought. And I went to the section. I'm like, that's he described it in one way, like, no, he went there and said this about them. I'm like, okay, they were freaking out because he basically is having a vision right in front of them. So I think they thought they was putting something on. And Darth will repeat this quite a bit, like, oh, he hasn't, I haven't heard him say it in a while though. Like, oh, they killed him on the spot. Like, no, they didn't. They dragged him outside of town and put the boots to him, like heavy style. And Paul was there. That's how they introduced Paul. Like he's like a villain in a movie. You know, it's like they're beating the shit out of him. Like, and in the now we introduce the soon to be Apostle Paul. Like, he was there to see that happen. But Darth just gets tons of it wrong. Like the context of it, the setting, the timing. He's using all this this exaggerated language. I'm like, none of this is there. Like, this guy likes to put himself out there like he's Admiral Bible, and he's fucking it up. He's fucking up the basics of this story. So yeah, he drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I would like to see that more, but I've noticed, like, he avoids those kinds of discussions because he's not great with the Bible.
Right. Daisy, Harley is still around. She's still learning. I've been watching, or I've sent her a bunch of R and Raw videos so she can understand like evolution a little bit better, and it's basically the failure of creationism to explain anything. She came out of that pretty easily because she already had like an innate intuition that didn't make any fucking sense. That either God is like deliberately deceptive in the way he created the world, or it's not actually 6,000 years old. She already had some pretty good, like, strong rules of inference. She was just inculcated by this from childhood. She went to a creationist high school. I mean, she's been surrounded by this her entire life. So it was a little bit difficult to penetrate the cultural strength of that that emotional connection to it. But no, she's doing really well, and she's learning, and she's always asking, she's always inquisitive, and we're still going through stuff. She's still around. I've told her that people miss her and want to see her back on the channel, but she doesn't think she's ready for that yet. She wants to put on a good performance the next time she gets into an engagement. And I was going to try and record that interaction, that second interaction she had with Darth, but he kicked me out of the fucking room, so I couldn't even do it, unfortunately. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into this video by Atheist Jr.
All right, here we go. I'm starting from the top, and I'm going to play it a little bit sped up because just at 125. All right, here we go. If this is too fast for anybody in the side chat, let me know, and I will slow it down.
It's a belief where you just suspend judgment.
Well, for me, I would say that it's a position that says I don't think any God or gods exist.
Okay, so what is your rational justification that God does not exist?
Well, when it comes to
right out of the gate,
faiths based on earthly religions, I know that those were all
right. Yeah, he's immediately like, okay, that's not what he's talking about. But he's in Darth's just going to keep doing this to him.
Okay, like you have a jar of gumballs. Okay, the answer is either there's an even quantity or an odd quantity, and you're unconvinced of Darth when he says it's even. So he's asking, okay, what's your justification that it's odd?
Yeah,
you're not saying that it's odd. You're just saying that you don't see the receipts. You don't see the evidence that it's even. He needs to demonstrate that to you. But you're not making an affirmative case to the contrary. Now, I do. I take that burden only if we're talking about the Christian God, which is where Darth will introduce worldview body doubleism while accusing everybody else of doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Which, from what I understand, I think happens quite a bit in this one. But
yeah, he only wants to argue about a deistic, generic, very ill-defined God who escapes all methods of evaluation and can't be really pinned down into any real category. But he won't ever defend the actual Christian God because he knows that he can't, and he will not go down that hole with us.
What little I've seen, put a pin in that. Make a note of that, because that's going to be interesting, because that does come up.
Texts were all written by men. Now, they claim that they were divinely inspired, but I think that it's more likely that man created God than God created man and divinely inspired people to write these texts. Okay. That's my rational explanation.
So it doesn't follow that human beings are mistaken about God, that therefore God doesn't exist. That's a non sequitur. Do you accept or reject what I just said?
That's interesting. Like he said, okay, it doesn't follow. It doesn't follow that's okay, and that's a non sequitur. First of all, and do you accept or reject what I said? Well, I would accept the fact that it would be a non sequitur to make the claim that God can exist because people don't believe in it. I would reject the part where that's what Atheist Jr. said, because that's not what he's saying. Because it sounds like he's attempting to answer what he thinks Darth is asking, which is, what's your reason for not believing in God? Which is, I'm inclined to believe that God is something that man made up to explain things. And it's more likely that we invented God and it's a fictional character rather than we were invented by God. And Darth is now running with this. Okay, well, here's the problem with that. Like, just because that's your belief, how does it follow that God actually doesn't exist? He didn't really ask him that. So now it's okay, well, why don't you ask him, like, basically what he wants, like, is God necessary? Like, Darth could clear this stuff up very easily by saying, do you think God is necessary or impossible? Pick one. Because that's where he's going.
Yeah, it's a false dichotomy. See, when atheists try to argue with Darth, we all make the same mistake. We walk in there using an argument as an inference to the best explanation, not a sound logical disproof or defeater. Okay, because that's not what we're trying to do. All we're trying to do is explain our reasoning for being unconvinced, not our reasoning for being convinced to the contrary affirmative. Like, that's not what we're doing. And like, people have tried this repeatedly, and it just doesn't work. It does not work. Darth won't allow you to do that. He has to pigeonhole you into the false dichotomy. Otherwise, he fucking loses, because he knows he can't argue against your psychological state, which is why he complains about it. There's no evidence for God. There's no evidence for God. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying we have not seen any evidence that would convince us of God. And people's idea of what qualifies as evidence is different. But if the Christian God really did exist, and this is Darth even admits this, if the Christian God existed, we would all just know that. There's no explicable reason why, if there was a creator entity who had a personal vested interest in our lives and our salvation, actually existed, we wouldn't just intrinsically know that. But he claims we do, and we just suppress the truth in our righteousness, which is a really weird epistemological fucking thing to argue. Like, that's so stupid. What is the difference between me not being aware that I'm aware of God and not being aware of God? That's stupid. Okay. Again, it's not about inference to the best explanation. It's about, okay, how do you prove this is unequivocally false? Because you're not allowed to disbelieve in something unless you can prove it's unequivocally false. You're not allowed to believe Bigfoot doesn't exist unless you can completely disprove the existence of Bigfoot.
Right. And yeah, and you can't handle it. You couldn't hold any attentive belief to any kind of degree.
No,
you could, because you got to be able to prove it one way or the other. And then, like, okay, well, and the other thing too behind this that I think is interesting is this, like, he wants to think that this is all purely acts of rational, like you rationalize your way to this kind of stuff in order to justify a belief. But it's like, look, that's not actually how belief usually forms.
Jefferson, Atheist Junior is in the chat. You want to bring him into the stream?
I did ask him if he wanted to get a link, but I don't know if he responded to me. What I will do instead, I'll just send this in the chat directly to him.
Yeah.
Atheist, I don't know if you're don't feel obligated to take this. This isn't a requirement, Atheist Junior. But if you do want to join, I'll post this to you. I've got this added to you. For everyone else, this link is just for Atheist Junior, so I'm going to throw this out there for him if he wants to join in. But again, Atheist Junior, don't feel obligated in any way. If you don't want to, you don't have to. So, if you do, feel free. So, yeah.
Hey, I like to hear myself talk, so I'm always willing to hop in.
I don't really. I would say I reject it. I don't really see how.
Okay, so you're saying it's not so in other words, if a creator God exists, then human beings must never be faulty in their thinking about God. Where'd you get that from?
I never said that.
Okay, well then I said it's a non sequitur.
Creator
So
God existed, then we wouldn't be faulty in our reasoning about it. We would know that he exists with certainty. We would all be acutely aware of this. No different than we're aware of the sun and the daylight sky. We would know this. There's no reason we wouldn't. It's perfectly explicable under atheism, under naturalism, why some people don't believe in God or are unconvinced that God exists.
But that's what
it's not explicable. It's not even feasible under the Christian worldview why some people wouldn't believe. And if you're not an Arminianist or a Calvinist or a pre-supper, this is a very devastating argument for you, the problem of non-belief. And that's what these sorts of lines of reasoning were built up to get out of. Because this is something that was like molesting John Calvin all the way back in like the 1600s. He didn't know how to fucking get out of this shit. Okay. Right. So his conclusion was everybody really does believe in God and they're just lying about it. Well, no, that's obviously not true. And this isn't true because if you go back, like, this precept garbage only really started with Van Til, right? It only started at the beginning of the 20th century. Okay. Why is it that in all of human history, nobody thought of this before Van Til? Why were there no Darth Dawkins of like, the days of Aristotle? Why was nobody like presupposing God exists? Not just any God, but the Christian God specifically. Why was nobody presupposing the Christian God before Christ walked the earth? Where was all the presupposition of Yahweh in China? Where was all the presupposition of Yahweh in the Mayans and the Aztecs? No. This is just a completely perverse heresy. Like the Catholic doctrine and the Orthodox doctrine admit outright, yes, there are people who are unconvinced, either because they're supposed to be, or invincible ignorance, or whatever have you. There's all these excuses of why, but it is an undeniable fact of our reality that there are people who are unconvinced of the Christian God, and this is a problem for Christianity. And this is why these precepts exist, because this is the worst rhetorical device ever for Christians. It is wonderfully effective when you actually get them to sit there and think about it. And a lot of them only have one retreat, that beliefs are actually a matter of choice, which is verifiably not the case.
Which is Darth. Yeah, that's Darth's position.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that it blows up the noetic effects of sin, which is something that he stated that he believes in. So it's like you basically, as soon as you get interrogated, if anyone was particularly savvy, they could just ask him, like, he's like, okay, well, what justifies that belief? I would be like, wait, here's the thing. I'm actually convinced that there isn't a God, especially the Christian God. Can you explain to me how, if your worldview is true, I'm able to do that? Right. And if Darth gets upset, then he doesn't understand the entailments of the noetic effects of sin. If people have corrected him on this and said, Darth, if anything, you should pity these people, because the Holy Spirit hasn't regenerated their hearts and made them aware of the fact that they actually should accept the revelation of God. That revelation is being occluded from their awareness by sin. But Darth gets into these arguments, and then he justifies everything that he does by saying, well, of course these atheists are going to be deceitful because they're lying to him specifically. They're lying. It's like, okay, he's even told these people that they're lying to themselves. It's like anyone under the noetic effect of sin is deceived, not lying to themselves. This isn't some act of like he's like browbeating people who have like a psychological condition. Like none of these concepts track for him. Like if it's a psychological condition, then yelling at us isn't going to work. If it's a choice, then that blows up most everything we understand about how decisions are formed. And if it's the quote unquote noetic effect of sin, which I think he's supposed to hold to, then his emotional baggage surrounded by this is completely out of sync with how he should be thinking. Like the rational conclusion should be pity for people who aren't where he is, not anger at them intentionally deceiving him, because we wouldn't intentionally be deceiving anyone. We are being deceived by forces of evil. That should be his worldview. And for some fucked up reason, it's not. He blames individual people for doing the bad thing of not agreeing with him on what to believe. It's absolutely childish.
Yeah, they use like Romans 1:20 as a supplementation for this precept garbage. But what's funny to me is that if they actually understood the context of Romans, that is a letter addressed to a very specific group of people.
Yeah.
I'll give you one guess who it's addressed to.
What Romans? Yeah.
The Romans, specifically the Roman Jews, people like Josephus. Okay?
Yeah, the Church of Rome. Yeah.
It's them who he was talking about when he said that God revealed himself to them plainly so that they would be out without excuse. Not everybody, because if you go to like 2 Corinthians chapter 2, okay, it's entirely different. Like let me read this to you, because this completely like throws a wrench in the whole, everybody knows God exists thing. Okay.
Yeah, I know where you're going, but go ahead.
Yeah. Is it 2 Corinthians? I think maybe it's 1 Corinthians chapter 2. Yeah, it's wisdom from the Spirit. Okay, so it says that these things God has revealed to us through the Spirit, for the Spirit searches everything, even the depths of God. For who knows a person's thought except the spirit of that person which is in him? So also no one comprehends the thoughts of God except the Spirit. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, that we might understand the things freely given to us by God. And we impart this in words not taught by human wisdom, but taught by the Spirit, interpreting spiritual truths to those who are spiritual. The natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are not revealed to him, and he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually undiscerned. So no, there are people who do not have the capacity to know or understand that God exists by God's own design. So if you think that what Romans 1:20 is saying is that everybody knows God exists, with we just suppress the truth, well, then you would have to believe that Paul was contradicting himself in Romans 1 chapter 2 when he says the exact opposite of that.
Exactly.
in a dichotomous situation here. Your position is God does not exist because human beings have faulty reasonings about God. That's what your position was.
I don't think my reasoning
does
is
it-
faulty.
Okay, listen, you got to focus here. Is it your position that God does not and cannot exist because some human beings have faulty reasoning about him?
You're just
No.
stating that the reasoning is faulty, but that's just a claim.
Go ahead.
So Atheist Junior, if you're listening to this, you should have just said, no, that's not my position. Your position is that the fact of the matter is the fallibility of humans gives you reason to doubt what they're telling you, especially since it requires such a tremendous suspension of your belief in the obvious laws of nature. Like, Darth has to admit at least that the things that God was doing that made his existence explicitly clear to everybody are no longer happening. He's not parting the Red Sea anymore, or leading people to the desert with a pillar of fire and a pillar of smoke. And he's not, descending manna from the heavens and allowing water to flow from rocks on command. He's not holding the sun still in the sky. And even despite all of these astonishing world-shattering miracles, it wasn't even good enough for his chosen people. They still turned around and worshiped a cow afterwards. So, no, he doesn't have the right to ask you if that's what you're saying, because it's very clear that's not what you're saying. No, I'm not saying that because people are fallible that there is no God. I'm saying because people are fallible, I have reason to doubt what they tell me about God. Right? God hasn't told me anything himself. He hasn't revealed himself to me personally. Now, at that point, he'll probably just call you a liar, but it's the truth. Okay. He hasn't done this for me, so I don't have this revelation. I don't have a reason to believe he exists. All I have to go on is what people tell me about him. And if people are fallible, which they very clearly are, I have a reason to doubt them. That's what I'm saying. Yep. I'm not arguing God doesn't exist. You don't ever fall into those false dichotomies. The moment he asks you justify God doesn't exist, ask him why. That's not my claim.
Yeah, the claim is I don't believe that there is a God. I'm not making an argument that God does. And this is the thing too, because he'll try to rope back. This is why he gets all worked up about agnostic definitions, about agnostic and atheist and all this kind of stuff. It's like, look, and it doesn't matter how many times anybody has made the illustration or made this statement, but it's like, for the purposes of philosophy, defining somebody as an atheist is essentially that position on that proposition. God exists or God doesn't exist. And for the purposes of engaging in philosophy, it does kind of have to be binary. Otherwise, you're not really going to have much of a point. But if you're talking about somebody who's an atheist, who's not, an atheist junior, I think, might be more science related in the end of the philosophy side of things. If you're just trying to ask somebody, it's like the idea of somebody describing themselves as an agnostic atheist, and Darth would just lose his shit. Look, in the common vernacular, what somebody's really trying to say with agnostic atheist, they're trying to cover both grounds. What they're saying with the agnostic part is that they don't know if there is or isn't a God, and that the atheist part, they're like, whether one exists or doesn't, I don't believe that it does. That's how those words are getting used, just in casual English. And then Darth just gets his knickers in a twist, and he's like, "Oh my God, you're just getting it wrong. That's not what the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy is like." No, in philosophical circles, they wouldn't use that definition of philosophy. But when you're talking to just some schmuck in Clubhouse, and you ask them if they're an atheist or something like that, and they're not particularly well read on this kind of stuff, they're going to be like, yeah, I'm an atheist because I don't think there's a God, or I'm not convinced that there's a God, or maybe they'll use language like I lack belief in a God, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just casual.
There's proof of this. Okay, he's interacted with professional philosophers. He's interacted with Alex Malpass, Stephen Law, Graham Oppie, Wesley Morriston, and every time he asks them these stupid flow sheet questions, they're either completely mystified by the content of the question, or they recognize that it's a script and they call him out on that. This is not sincere. Nobody in the higher order philosophy, these are people who have been doing this for 30, 40 years. And this is garbage. This is complete nonsense to them. And they're these people are, pretty devoid of serious ego, but they'll just admit, that question makes no fucking sense to me whatsoever. Stephen Law called him out on this. I'm completely mystified by your question. I don't understand what that means. This is a guy who has been a professional PhD philosopher for 30 years. I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, Darth. Okay. Now, Darth likes to boast himself as a philosophy expert. Okay. Well, the key to a good philosopher is other philosophers' ability to understand what you're saying and give a critique. The reason why philosophers can't really critique what Darth is saying is because it's incoherent nonsense. He might as well be speaking a different language.
Yeah, exactly.
Whenever they try to get him onto an affirmative ontology for what he's arguing for, he flip-flops. People have pointed this out. He will flip-flop between how you know the essence of a certain thing and what the essence of that thing is. He's doing this to Atheist Junior right now. It's going from like what the fact of the matter actually is, the essence of the matter, and your course of knowledge on the matter. They're not the same thing. What Atheist Junior is saying is that this is my epistemological framework. This is what I think I know about the subject. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Darth's question is, okay, well, how do you know that's actually the case? That's not what he's saying. It's very obvious. He equivocates this all the time.
Somebody's poking you. Or King Xerxes denies that he knows that God exists.
Warren's a troll. Yeah, he does this on the fucking Blasphemer Bible podcast too.
Yeah, like Xerxes.
I have ankle biters.
If we know that if we know that we deny God, then how does the noetic effect of sin work? I mean, think about that and then get back to us.
You're not focusing at all on what I'm saying to you. You're just simply talking past me. Okay, I'm focusing direct.
Coming from a professional past talker, Darth. This is rich coming from Darth.
On what you're saying. God does not exist, according to you. Is my understanding that your position is that God does not exist because human beings have a faulty reasoning about him.
If that's your understanding, then it's wrong. And
Okay,
There you
God
go,
does not
Atheist
exist.
Junior.
Okay,
Good
good.
job.
Then God does not exist because.
Yeah, that was a good comeback.
And then he immediately follows it up with the pigeonhole question. Okay.
But actually, Atheist Junior asks. I think it's coming up here, and it kind of gave me a little bit of an epiphany.
Because what do you mean? Because he just like he either does or doesn't.
I thought that was interesting. I hadn't heard anybody kind of put it quite that plainly, because J. Robin had been trafficking in this before he checked out of this, this circle of weirdos with Darth and crew. And that was his go-to question. God does not exist because. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If this thing necessarily exists, a because seems a little bit like, beside the point, right? Like, I mean, you wouldn't really ask that. Like, and if you gave an answer because it's necessary, that's just saying that it does, right? It's kind of a tautology. Like, God exists because God exists. It can't be any other way. So asking, how God doesn't exist because, like, okay, if Darth is trying to get this from some kind of like fucked up take on like modal ontological arguments, then it's like, okay, why do you think that God doesn't in fact exist? Because I think the one that you're talking about as defined is impossible. That would be my take on it.
So this is actually funny because on my video, on my YouTube channel, there's two videos of my interactions with Darth. The first one is following the script with Darth Dawkins, and the other one is not following the script with Darth Dawkins. And you'll notice that the one where I don't follow the script is a fraction of the time of the one that I do. Like, the brevity speaks volumes. Darth asked me this question. This was the video where I tried to call him out about the whole fucking Nicodemus thing. And then he asks me, God does not exist because, and I decided to play the game and answer the question because it's not a logical contradiction for him not to exist. And since by definition of God, he's a necessary being, if it's not a logical contradiction for God to not exist, in some possible world, he doesn't exist. And it's a necessary being which doesn't exist in some possible world is a logical contradiction, and logical contradictions can't exist. Darth muted me immediately. He refused to go down that modal ontological train because he knew I was going to trap his ass. Because the only way for him to say that it's a logical contradiction for God to not exist is to say that God possesses existence as an essential property, and there is no philosophical backing of that. Like, not even the people that he parrots all the time would argue that existence is a property that way. That's patently absurd and very obviously demonstrably not the case. And you can just think about this in your head. Think about the difference in concept. What is the difference between an apple and an existing apple? Fucking nothing. What's the difference between an existing red apple and a non-existing red apple in your head? Nothing. You're just thinking of a red apple. It doesn't add anything to the concept. It's not a predicate. It's not a property. Okay? It doesn't inform you as to its state in the world. It's the condition of the thing to have properties in the first place. If you use it as a property, you're going to fall into a semantic contradiction, because if I were to say a statement like Zeus doesn't exist and existence is a property, well, now all of a sudden the dispositive property of non-existence is equally applicable. For instance, if I say that this apple is not red, okay, that's an assailable property that you can conceive of in your head. You know it's not red. You don't know what color it is, but you can replace that with something else. You can't replace existence with anything else. There's no concept of non-existence. Non-existence is just not. It's just not. There is nothing there. So if you say Zeus doesn't exist, what you're literally saying, if existence is a property, is that there is a thing called Zeus which does not possess the property of existence, or rather possesses the property of non-existence.
Right.
And it's incoherent for anything that doesn't exist to possess properties. So clearly you cannot use existence as a property. And the only way that you can say it's a logical contradiction for God to not exist is to say that the statement God does not exist equals the statement God is not God. Similar to circles are not round equals the statement circles are not circles, because roundness is what we mean when we say circle. Effectively, this argument would be existence is what we mean when we talk about God, that God is a thing which exists by definition. And everybody knows that that is patently invalid reasoning. You cannot just define things into existence. And Darth won't go that. He'll do that by like proxy. He'll define God into existence, but he won't patently do it. He won't do it brazenly, because that's just obviously invalid reasoning, and everybody would call him out on that. So he does it in a roundabout way. But if he were to tackle that argument with me, he would have to do it immediately. He would have to overtly define God into existence, at which point anybody can just dismiss him as being dishonest. Like, there's no way he would have been able to get out of that. And so he mutes me immediately when I said that.
Yeah, because I don't think, I mean, like, he's just cribbed together enough bits and pieces of a lot of different arguments to try this. But I think there's actually a point coming up here where you can actually watch him lay out like an evidentialist take on it to Atheist Jr. And then Atheist Jr. makes a response, and then he immediately pivots. And actually, he may not even get a chance to say anything. And then Darth immediately pivots to a kind of half-assed precept, like his take on precept. It's really like, it's transparently bad. And if we do get to that, I do have a little extra to say on that one if we get to it. I'm hoping it's this video.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you, just so we're clear, you are Atheist Junior from YouTube. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I want you to explain to me, be quiet, Happy. I want you to explain to me why God does not exist.
Why God does not exist? If I do that,
atheist, that's what
if
that's
I
what
do that, will
atheism
you
is.
explain to me why God does exist if I do that?
Sure. Of course.
Okay. Well, I think that the reason that God doesn't exist is that people are afraid of dying, so that they've created religions and they think that God exists, but he actually doesn't. So that's why.
It doesn't. If that's true, it doesn't follow that God doesn't exist. That's a non sequitur. Do you know what a non sequitur is?
Yeah, I know what a non sequitur is.
Okay, so what you just said is a non sequitur.
That's your opinion.
No, it's not. Okay, and that's not a rebuttal. Saying that your opinion is not a rebuttal.
But stating your opinion, yeah, it is also not a rebuttal. This part here where he's trying to do this, like, this is Darth actually derailing himself a little bit, because if he's going to be charitable enough to get into this discussion, then he should be willing to like parse this distinction between what a person claims to believe and what a person can argue about the actual state of affairs if they're going to start talking about ontology. And instead of doing that, he just immediately wants to get into, here's another example, like he's just rushing the win. Here's another example of an atheist dodging me. This is how I'm winning, because you can already see them starting to duck and deceive and all this kind of crap. Like, no, that's not what it's gotten. Like, he can actually, well, maybe he can't. I don't know. Maybe he could back in the past, but now he's got too short a fuse. He could like nurture this in a direction, but it's like he's gotten so greedy for quick wins, what he thinks are wins. He just wants to refute like everything that someone says. Like, it's really fucked up.
Like I said, he's bickering over the technical precision of the argument. He is not going for a precision. He's not going to for an inference to the best explanation, because I mean, it's obviously intuitive that an all perfect, benevolent, all powerful God would not have instantiated a flawed, chaotic creation that didn't serve his will to perfection. I make this argument all the time that if God is truly perfect, then a state of affairs where only God exists would also be perfect. You cannot make perfection any better. That's the definition of perfection. So if God is perfect and he arranges anything other than himself to exist, he contradicts his own perfection by default, because he's necessarily diluting the perfect state of the world.
Yeah, possibly.
That's not intuitive at all. That's not what we would expect to be the case.
Yeah, and I was actually discussing this with somebody else. I think I was talking to my brother about this. Like, the only way that you really get around this is to add God on to be superfluous. I was talking with AJ about it, actually, AJ Keb, last night, because he was saying that, because Jack Angstrom makes that argument quite a bit. and rarely do any of the people that he talks to, find a productive way around that.
Okay, can God exist where people believe in him because they're afraid to die? Of course they could be. It doesn't see what you're reiterating again is God does not exist because human beings have faulty reasoning. Okay, we're talking. Do you know what ontology means?
Yeah.
Okay, ontology is the nature of being. Okay, now we're not talking about the reasons why people believe in God. We're talking about the actual existence of God. Your position is God does not actually exist. Is God's existence ontologically dependent upon the correct thinking that human beings have about him?
No.
Okay, so when you explain to me here on out why God doesn't exist, then you no longer have the luxury in me that God doesn't exist because human beings have faulty reasoning, because you now conceded that his ontological status has nothing to do as to whether people's thinking about him is correct or not. So God does not exist because
You're presupposing the fact that he already exists in that question.
Sir, please explain to me why God ontologically does not exist, since you're an atheist.
Well, I already did, and I asked you, if I do that, will you explain to me why he does?
Yeah, and I'll actually push back on this because Atheist Junior really didn't get into like an ontological reason. He didn't get into that. He did give what I think is probably what most skeptics' answer is for why, or one of the big reasons why they don't believe that there's a God. Because if you're just, a lot of it's based in just probability. What's more likely that a massive supernatural being is responsible for absolutely everything in the universe, including the universe itself and all the good and bad that comes with that, or man conjured up God as a fictional character? Like which one's maybe more likely?
Well, the first one, the whole God dictates what is, can be, and cannot be. Which, by the way, it's funny you bring that up because there's a person in the live chat right now parroting that exact thing.
Warren. Yeah.
Earlier, in an attempt to refute my modal ontological argument against the existence of God, this same person said something along the lines of, "God can't not exist because that's incoherent." Similar to how circles can't not be round. Okay. Well, if we play this game consistently, if God can dictate what is, can be, and cannot be, then he could instantiate logical contradictions. He can, in fact, make square circles because he's the one who decides that that's going to be impossible. Now, the immediate fallback, which I predict that Warren will attempt to try, is that logic is some immutable aspect of the nature of God. Well, in which case, God does not dictate what is, can be, and cannot be. What is, can be, and cannot be is a brute fact of God's nature, which, I mean, you could just stop kicking the can down the road and say it's a brute fact of reality. It just is the case. All you're doing is saying it is the case with an extra step. You're not actually solving the problem. God does not dictate what is, can be, and cannot be. What is, can be, and cannot be is just a brute fact of his nature that he didn't choose. He didn't choose to have an effective will over an ineffective will. That would have required him to have an effective will prior to having an effective will. It's incoherent. Okay. You fall into all of these little fucking traps with the logical incoherency of God because every argument to explain these problems creates more problems. You're literally trying to fight fire with fire, and it's not going to work.
Does exist afterwards, and you said yes.
Listen to me. This is very embarrassing for you.
Okay, here we go.
You keep on playing dodgeball, right? Now, I've asked you repeatedly to tell me why God does not exist, and the only things that came out of your mouth has something to do about faulty human thinking. Is God ontologically existing dependent upon correct human reasoning? Well, the answer is no. So you can't offer an argument that God does not exist because human beings have faulty reasoning, because God's existence or non-existence doesn't depend upon her. So can you please, without repeating what you've said before, explain to me why God?
And that really wasn't what he was talking about.
But hold on. According to Darth's argument, it does depend on people's faulty reasoning. If God exists, everybody would know this for certain. There would be nobody unaware of the existence of God. Okay. The only argument Darth has against the fact that there are people who are unaware of the existence of God is that they're just lying. So yeah, in Darth's own epistemology, it is predicated on whether or not people have faulty reasoning if God exists. God does not exist if there's a single person who is genuinely unconvinced of his existence, according to Darth's own argument.
And it raises a weird question because when people have asked about this before, he accuses them of running into the cliche of like, oh, the whole, well, you'd basically have to rule out the viability of all these other gods. In his case, though, it's slightly different. What he actually has to rule out is that, say, someone who is a devout Muslim, a devout Hindu, he has to determine that that person is putting on a front, is faking it. In fact, all of them are. None of them genuinely believe that. They're deceiving themselves to at least some degree, and simultaneously being deceived from the outside by this false religion. They know what the real God is. They know it's Jesus, but he can't possibly substantiate that claim. So he's in a worse position than even that idea, like, oh, well, you'd have to go and actually like suss out whether or not, well, is the Greek pantheon viable, is Shintoism viable, all this other kind of stuff. Rule all these things out. You really can't do that ontologically. And his attempt at epistemology here is just insane. It's like, dude, he really does have to do this. Now I know he believes that. He thinks that he's justified in believing that, but he can't demonstrate that. How on earth could anyone demonstrate that somebody who is just as devout for Islam or just as devout for Hinduism is faking it? And they could turn around and make the same accusation of him. Like, no, Shiva is the real revealed God, or Allah is the true revealed God. You're just lying to yourself about this Christianity thing because that's what you want. You've chosen to believe that, and now you're hanging on to it, and you're lying to yourself, and you're lying to me. Checkmate, Darth. Right? I mean...
Yeah, no, you just throw it back on him. Like, I have a video called Using Precept Against Precepts, where I go into the theist experience. Darth is not there to rescue any of these people with his bludgeoning tactics. And they are trying to argue with me about how to justify the precept worldview in a way that's any more sufficient as an explanation than just saying that it's all a brute contingency regardless, without God as an extra step. And they're all like befuddled. They don't know how. There's so many different periods of dead silence in that video. It's hilarious. And at the end of the video, I make a statement about how it's just kicking the can down the road. You're not actually solving anything, so precept is a failure. And then there's like dead quiet, and then Not Fox goes, all the atheists have been vanquished, congratulations, and then he kicks me out of the room. Not kidding. Not kidding.
No, that's why I'm laughing.
They're stupefied the whole video. Like there was 20 of them in there, and they cannot, none of them have any sufficient way of like arguing with me. They give me something, I swat it down, dead silence. They give me something, I swat it down, dead silence. There is probably more collective periods of silence in that video than there is actual interaction. Oh, Jesus. Jack Burton showed up. The man, the myth, the legend.
Yep, he's here.
You live rent-free in all of our heads.
Yep.
At what point are we all going to just concede that Jack Burton is God?
God is a deist. Well, what the hell?
Because he's not necessary. We have science, so.
Okay, when you say God is not necessary, that is the same thing as saying God does not exist. Do you realize that?
Well, forgive me, but I think it's just a very dumb question. I mean, why does
Did
God
you hear
not exist?
Okay, what did I just say to you?
Yeah, he's right. Saying God is not necessary based on the God that Darth is talking about is the same thing as saying God doesn't exist. And you can defend that if you know how. Okay. But the moment you try, he body doubles and goes to a God who isn't definitionally necessary. Every single fucking time. Okay. You try to argue against the necessary God, and he body doubles you with just a thing that's foundational and eternal. Like he will flip the script on you immediately. I did this, and that's exactly what he did. The moment I tried to argue against the necessary God that he argues for, there's a philosopher known as Richard Swinburne, who wrote a paper about what kind of a necessary being would God be, and the conclusion was basically that it's incoherent for God to be a necessary being at all. There's no way of justifying that. It falls apart. Okay, and Richard Swinburne is a Christian. I believe he's a Catholic. I'm not entirely sure, but he's a Christian.
I think he is.
And this is a paper that's been circulating for a while. And it was one of the things that Philippe Leon cited when he wrote his argument on the incoherence of creation out of nothing, creatio ex nihilo. And if you're interested in that kind of literature, I encourage you to look it up and read it. And I think it's Richard Swinburne makes a lot of compelling cases. Regardless, God cannot be necessary. The Christian God cannot be necessary given the properties that the Christian God has on top of the necessity. Okay, now, there is a way you can believe in a necessary God, but you're going to have to subtract all the other properties that make the Christian God what he is. Omnipotence, omnibenevolence, omniscience, all that stuff goes away immediately. At which point you have a patently unbiblical version of God. Okay, so yes, I agree with you, Darth. If you say God is not necessary when talking about the Christian God, you were saying God does not exist. And that is a completely defensible position, as I illustrated earlier. If God is necessary, it must be a logical contradiction for him to not exist. And what is that contradiction? What is the property of God that makes it the case that the statement God does not exist is equal to the statement God is not God? Okay, this is where Darth is just patently defining God as a thing that exists. God is a thing that exists by definition, or like, rather, I define God as a thing which exists, therefore God exists. Well, if that was valid reasoning, you could do that with anything. I define Bigfoot as a thing which exists, therefore Bigfoot exists. Whether or not the properties are actually are really actualized in our reality is irrelevant. Apparently, you can just say it exists and therefore it does, as long as it's incorporated within the definition of the thing. And this is obviously stupid. There's no synonym of the word stupid that better describes this kind of thought process. And Darth won't let you go down that. Okay. He anticipates when he makes these sorts of accusations against people that they won't understand the trick being played on them. But the moment he runs into somebody who does, like me, and I call out that trick, boom, I get the red beam. I'm muted, knocked out of the room. Won't engage. Okay. He is a pussy and a fucking coward, and he knows this is an invalid argument, and he won't defend it. He will always body double you and make you argue against a non-necessary God, because if he subtracts that property, it's unfalsifiable. If he includes it, it's immediately falsifiable. All you have to do is hijack Plantinga's argument for God, modal ontological argument for God. If you guys want to hear the syllogism, take out a pen and paper. Premise 1, if God exists, he exists in all possible worlds. Premise 2, it is not a logical contradiction for God to not exist. Premise 3, if it is not a logical contradiction for God to not exist, in some possible world, God does not exist. Premise 4, given 1 and 3, if God does not exist in one possible world, God does not exist in any possible world. Premise 5, God does not exist in some possible world, therefore God does not exist in all possible worlds. Conclusion, God does not exist in the actual world, or God does not exist.
Yep.
It's actually very easy to do that. The only premise that he can object to is premise 2. It's not a logical contradiction for God to not exist. And the only half-assed way he can do this is to say that it's a contradiction for God to not exist because God is necessary, and God is not necessary because it's a contradiction for God to not exist. And what do we call that?
Just blinkered. I mean,
what is we all know the word. What is that argument?
That's
God. It's a contradiction for God to not exist because he's necessary, and he's necessary because it's a contradiction for him not to exist.
Yeah, that would just be a good old-fashioned contradiction.
It's a circular argument,
And
but it's virtuous circularity, not vicious circularity, as though there were an actual fucking difference.
Well, that's why you don't have to worry about it, because the virtue's there. Yeah. Yeah, I don't. The thing that you end up seeing, I think, probably more of with him lately, is shifting from like what you've already laid out and going from that, right, and then shifting to like, okay, now if you object to anything, because I think he's about to do this. Maybe he's already started to with Atheist Jr. Now, like, because and he's kind of set himself up for this. I want you to give me your rationale for why you're an atheist, why you don't think that there's a God, or I want you to explain to me what your rationale is for thinking God's impossible, however he wants to phrase it. And then somebody lays it out, and then he'll just jump back into, but who's to, what makes you think that your concept of evidence or your concept of concepts is even grounded? Like, how do you justify the things that you claim to know? Are you justifying that stuff with your reason? He'll bounce back into what he thinks is his understanding of a precept argument to then blow that up. So this makes no sense. It's just like he's automatically built in this Mott and Bailey shift. So he's engaging in multiple fallacies from the jump, but there's always that Mott and Bailey fallacy move. Or I'll engage with them with this kind of classical apologetics thing, and we'll talk about evidence. And then when they start handing me stuff about evidence, I'll just shift back. I'll just shift over to presuppositionalism, and then we'll just call the whole notion of evidence into question and their capacity to reason on their own. It's fucking obnoxious. It's like
minor
you can't. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say minor nitpick in the comment section. Trude Hall, Elohim is not the father of Yahweh. El is the father of Yahweh. The Elohim is the plural pantheon of the sons of daughters of El and Asherah.
Yeah.
Just wanted to let him know because that expose has been coming out recently because we've learned more about the Canaanite tradition or Canaanite tradition, however you want to pronounce that, regarding that pantheon and how Yahweh had all these sibling rivals that he was trying to outpower. And this is what he even says in Exodus, that I will make the gods of Egypt bow before me.
Yeah.
The first commandment is thou shalt not have any other gods before me, not there are no other gods before me.
Yeah. Telling.
Mm-hmm.
That's somebody, I can't remember who it was. Dr. Bowen had told me about him, Josh Bowen. He said something like, I can't remember who the guy is, but his hypothesis, and I don't know if it's gaining ground or not, was that Yahweh may have actually been Baal. Like there's a little bit of a similarity there, where there's this sort of idea where you have a pantheon of gods, and then one of the really strong gods ends up developing its own kind of cult on its own, and then there's a group. Sometimes those cults can develop the sect ends up becoming adherent to the idea that that's the one true God, right? In one of two ways, not in a monotheistic kind of, there's only this one, like this is the best one and everything else should bow down.
The Adonai, the Almighty, the Supreme One.
And was sort of comparing that, like, the idea that Yahweh might be something of a storm god and has direct parallels to Baal. Yeah,
because people back then didn't understand that air was particulate matter, but they were able to observe that if you don't breathe, you die. And so they thought that air was a living spirit that entered into you and animated you and made you alive. So Yahweh isn't really a name. It's actually just the sound you make when you breathe. It's the tetragram it's on.
All right. Justin's like the system lords in Stargate.
You said, does saying that he's not necessary, isn't that the same thing as saying God doesn't exist?
Yeah, saying God is not necessary is the same proposition as saying God doesn't exist. It's the same proposition.
You're right, Darth, but if they tackle you on that, you change the subject.
Exactly.
So please tell me why God doesn't exist.
Because I don't feel like him existing. I don't know. This is a stupid question.
It's not a stupid question. You're an atheist, and you agree that atheism is the denial of all gods. Your position is God does not exist. Is that your position?
Yeah, it's a personal position that I hold.
Can you please tell me how you determine God does not exist?
The burden shift, like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times Malpass pointed this out to him in Discord conversations. Like, if you are asking me for what my belief state is, then I'm telling you I don't think a God exists. Like, I have no problem taking that stance. But when you shift it and try to ask me like how is the case that there isn't one, you're asking me to provide you an argument for why a God's not possible. That's a different question entirely. He keeps fucking doing this. Malpass has gone after him. Alex Malpass and Ask Yourself and others on Discord servers from many years ago went after him on this and had made this observation to him. I've watched the videos where they've made the observation, and it's just like he's that dog that can't quite figure out the fetch with the frisbee. He just catches it with his forehead. No,
I mean, but here's the thing: like, Darth is not a reasonable person, so you can't use reason on it in the first place. But what's the only thing that any of us should be attempting to accomplish with these sorts of dissections of his argument is the benefit of the people listening. Okay, nobody in here should be under the delusion that they're actually going to go into a conversation with Darth Dawkins and get to use the arguments that I make. Okay.
Oh no.
Because first and foremost, he will recognize the argument that you're using, and he'll know that it's mine, and he'll mute you as a Xerxes crony or whatever. Like when Harley, when she's actually here right now listening, by the way, if you guys want to say hi to her. But when she first interacted with him, he noticed that she was like parroting some of the things that I say. She was emulating my argumentation style, and he called her like a Xerxes bimbo, and then he accused her of being trans because apparently that's an insult, and B, that like a cis woman wouldn't be converted by me. I don't know. I don't understand the motivation of that accusation.
Who knows in Darth's mind?
I mean, he just has to throw his rampant homophobia around. He needs to make it explicitly clear to everybody that he really, 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 really hates gay people, and he's totally not gay.
Yeah,
all the time. It's like fucking Mr. Batman always bringing up pedophilia. How do you know you're not a pedophile? At this point, I'm pretty convinced that he's not asking it rhetorically. He wants an answer because he doesn't know yet.
Yeah, his assertions on that are disturbing. Yeah, I can't stand that guy. I can't even listen to him. Yeah,
absolutely
he's creepy. All right.
Okay, well, I was trying to earlier when you interrupted me, but when I was in Sunday school, they told me about Noah's Ark, and I said,
I
well,
don't want to hear about your biography. I
Well-
want you to tell me right now. Listen, I'm not trying to be rude. I get this all the time. I ask atheists why God doesn't exist, and they start launching off into a biography. I'm not trying to be rude here, but I don't want to waste time either. I don't want to hear about your biography. I want you to tell me right now how it is that you know God doesn't exist.
I mean, I could answer it in about 10 seconds, but you have to interrupt me. You know, it's very rude.
I'm please waiting. See what you're now doing is when you play dodgeball and I stop you for playing.
When you engage in the meta, I'll call it dodgeball. When I engage in the meta, I'm a righteous agent of justice, crusading against D-bags, and this is so transparently vain and self-serving. Oh my God, what
You know what?
bitch.
You know who like Darth's
Jesus.
style reminds me of? The laws of 8 from the movie The Postman with Kevin Costner, right? Law
Okay.
number 7: justice can be dictated.
It's been years since I've seen that movie.
I love that movie.
Was that Will Patton's group?
Yes, that was Will Patton. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's what it reminds me of, man. Is that
Yeah.
that sort of style, like that that ultimate supremacy, and that you have to do everything that you can to like impress him. Okay. And what's even funnier is that there's like a there's this character who's completely silent throughout the entire movie, and he's like the second in charge of the militia that Will Patton runs.
Yeah.
And he he apparently the backstory to him is that he challenged Will Patton for leadership, Will Patton's character for leadership of the clan, and Will Patton cut out his tongue and cut off his balls. Okay.
Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of Parakeet.
Yeah, I gotta say that I was gonna say something really mean. Like I kind of wish Parakeet couldn't speak, but because what comes out of his mouth is always bootlicking. Good Lord, that guy's a lick spittle. Jeez.
Yeah,
God,
or
I'm
One
sure-
Way, or Ton Lock, or J. Robin, or Not Talks, any of his other little obsequious segments.
Yeah. Although, I mean, to be in his defense, Tonelock has actually kind of stood up when he's thought Darth has gone too far. I don't know that Parakeet ever has. So,
Oh no, Parakeet and One Way never have. Ton Lock has, but that's because Ton Lock. See, what happens is like Darth has his little minions, and they absorb enough of his bullshit like a sponge, and they try to go out into the real world and try that out for themselves. But they don't have Darth's vitriol or maliciousness for the most part, and they fail. We saw this happen with J. Robin. Like, it mentally exhausted him to the point where he realized he had this epiphany: these arguments don't work unless I abuse the people I'm talking to. And then he just abandoned the Discord sphere altogether, the debate sphere. He's back now, but he doesn't do the debating anymore.
who is?
J. Robin.
He
Now
is
his
back?
his username is just J. Yeah, I was playing Secret Hitler with him the other day. He's a chill dude if he's not talking about religion. You know, he's abandoned the Darth parroting, and he's actually pretty cool and nice to talk to. I remember the first interaction I ever had with him before he really got onto the whole Darth is God thing. He and I had a conversation about causality and what it means that God caused the universe. And after a pretty lengthy 30-minute conversation, I got him to admit, no, God did not cause the universe. Whatever process God used to facilitate the universe's existence was not causation, because God can't stand in causal relationships with things that don't fucking exist. That's another Darth shtick. Well, how does it stand in causal relationships with the universe? Well, how does God? The universe didn't exist until God, fucking spiked his nose, sneezed, whatever, and it came into existence. So what relationship did he have with the universe prior to its existence? None. So God doesn't stand in causal relationships with the universe either. But that's a different story.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, no, I knew that. I didn't know that J. Robin was. He had told me back when he was getting out of like the clubhouse stuff and the debate stuff and all that he was still going to be in some of the. He'd be popping into Discord stuff because he did game and shit like that. So I'm not surprised to see him around. I was just wondering if he was going to end up if he was going to relapse back into the Darth Dawkins, the cage stage Calvinist, debate bro stage.
That's funny.
I'm glad to hear that he's still chill. So
Michael Fredgin in the chat said that Parakeet is the parrot from Aladdin. It is funny though. It didn't click with me, the self-awareness of that username. He's literally a parrot.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Trying
accuse
to
me
answer
for
your
being
questions. I'm trying.
I will shut up. Please tell me right now how God does not exist.
Okay, I came to the position that Noah's Ark wasn't true, and then later in my life, I hardened that position as an atheist. There. Was that fast enough for you?
That's a non sequitur.
I don't care if it doesn't follow for you. It's my own personal opinion.
The issue is not that it's unsatisfactory to me. Your statement is a non sequitur, and I will explain why it's a non sequitur. It doesn't follow that if Noah's Ark is false, therefore no God exists.
If Noah's Ark story is true in any way that's meaningful to Christians, right? That if it's false, then the Christian God and the God of Judaism likely does not exist. Some generic, apply label here creator being could still exist.
No. Because Darth's position is that if the Bible is wrong about anything, then God doesn't exist.
So yeah, perfect. So from his position, it can't work.
Because he notice the language. It's not if Noah's Ark is false, then the Christian God, the one that I believe in, doesn't exist. It's that it doesn't follow that if the Noah's Ark story is false, that no God exists. Okay, well, we're not talking about any God. We're talking about yours, Darth. Like, he's so adamant that his is the necessary end-all be-all, that he is like the champion of righteousness, the epitome of ego and the instantiator of all, and he needs to be worshipped. But apparently Darth has no problem hiding his God behind the veneer of deism. That's how proud of his God that Darth is. He has to hide him behind deism.
Yeah, even Warren says here, Darth is wrong here. If the Christian God does not exist, no God exists. Well, and I think that Darth would agree with that statement, but the way he's approaching these discussions, especially at this stage in his conversation with Atheist Jr., he's acting as if that's not the case. Like, and this is one of those. This is when you could just as easily accuse Darth Dawkins of engaging in a worldview body double. Like, we know that he acknowledges that not only does the Christian God exist, but it exists necessarily, and it exists by virtue of the fact that no other God can exist in its place. That's just completely that is an impossibility. The existence.
Yeah,
of
Darth's
any other
worldview
God
is a dichotomy: either his God exists or no God exists. And Jack Burton has called him out on this repeatedly. And his worldview body doubleism is so apparent. And what is hilarious to me is he attempts to accuse us of that. Like, he projects so hard. At what point does that become a pathology, I wonder?
Well, at this point, it's become so automatic. I mean, he makes this case of, this is a point of pride that he's been doing this for over a decade. But it's like, like, I don't play golf, but I know enough. I've known enough golfers that are like, if you play golf for a really long time, but you've been making a lot of like really elemental mistakes, and you just keep making them for years and years and years, pretty soon you've just basically ingrained a bunch of really bad habits, and you're a shit golfer forever. And I think that's kind of what Darth has done. He's developed so many shortcuts to these kinds of things that he thinks that he's just skipping to the end, and he's poning people quickly. And it's like, no, dude, he's just got all these fallacies on speed dial. So he just like burps them up, and it's almost like, watching somebody deal with a broken NPC. The dialogue tree's not quite right, and you start getting frustrated because like, this stupid thing's not responding to my inputs the right way,
Hey, is your live chat open to people who aren't subbed to you?
Yes.
Okay. Because Harley would like to interact with the peoples, and she can't see the live chat. She just messaged me on Discord.
I don't have anybody blocked or anything, unless she is she on is she looking at the top chat or the live chat? Even if she's looking at the top chat, she should see somebody.
Yeah, she showed me a screenshot, and it just says the like-dislike ratio. Well, dislikes are gone now, apparently, because YouTube wants to be a hug box. But then there's the share, the save, and the report button, but the live chat isn't there where it is on my phone. So, Harley, maybe if you click the video, like actually maximize the video, you'll see a little chat box up in the top right-hand corner of the screen, and you can click on it. Try that.
Yeah. There shouldn't be any. There's no real user exclusions at this point, other than there's a couple of like older troll accounts that were blocked a long time ago. But I try to go through those and clean those out in case somebody.
Yeah, the only comments I remove on my videos are like the spam, like porn bots.
Yeah, that's usually, and I
But
haven't.
I don't
had
know
any-
why those pop up on my videos because I don't even watch pornography. Like it's not even in my browser.
Yeah, I mean, and the weird thing is they show up. It doesn't matter what you're using, Mac, PC, phone, tablet. Yeah, just every once in a while. It was happening with almost every other stream that I had running, and lately I haven't had to deal with them, or I should say, people that mod for me haven't really had to deal with them. So they come in waves. No pun intended.
Atheism is that there is no God exists. Not believing in Noah's Ark, from your perspective, might falsify the Christian God, but that's not atheism. Atheism is that there is no creator God. So it is a non sequitur to say God does not exist because you believe Noah's Ark is false. That's a non sequitur.
Well, the
Okay.
Bible is supposed to be inerrant. If the Bible is wrong, then his claims in the Bible are not true, and that God,
That doesn't
exist.
get
Oh,
you
is
to
that
atheism.
disproves the Christian
Yeah,
God, not all gods.
hold on. Yeah. What you're doing is you're going from global atheism to local atheism. Have you ever heard those two terms
Bingo!
before?
There you go. Worldview body doubleism.
Yep, and it's like, look, when we're talking about this, it really doesn't matter because, and even this makes no sense because, like, as far as he's concerned, if he's talking with somebody that is identified as an atheist, then like you as an atheist deny the existence of all gods. Like, sure, fine, I'll take that. I'll take on that mantle. Like, if you want to do that. And this is just kind of weird. Like, well, no, but I'm looking at testimony about this particular God, and I don't believe in it. So the more I see of this kind of stuff, like the Exodus not being a true account, Noah's flood not actually happening, the resurrection not really being substantiated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of strikes against it. I'm not inclined to think that this is true, and I'm not inclined to think that the claims it makes about Yahweh or Jesus are true either. Like, oh, okay, well, that's well, now you're just engaging in local atheism because you're just trying to say that there's no Christian God. Okay, so is Darth, like, I would just like somebody's like, so Darth, are you acknowledging that I'm on a good track there? I'm on a sound, reasonable path when I'm excluding the Christian God. So which God is more reasonable? I guess it's time to I can scratch that off and move right onto the Quran or to the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, what the fuck? Like, this is so fucking dishonest. Like, of course that's not going to work. I've seen him debate for hours how the fucking Noah's flood was necessary for his 6,000 year, rapid evolution crap or whatever.
Yeah, well, let's continue.
He baits and switches so effortlessly. I'm inclined to think he truly doesn't understand what he's doing. Yeah, he doesn't really understand what he's doing.
No.
Okay, global atheism is a philosophical descriptor that refers to that there are no gods. It's classical atheism. Local atheism is just that somebody does not believe in a particular God presented. But you can only be a local atheist is if you're not a global atheist. Okay. Now, if you're a local atheist, it means you disbelieve in one or more gods that are presented, but that you believe in at least one creator God. Okay. But if you're not a local atheist and you're a global atheist, you believe there are no gods. So challenging the existence of the Christian God doesn't get you to global atheism. Are you a global atheist?
Yeah.
Okay, so challenging the Bible or the God of the Bible doesn't get you to atheism per se. So can you please tell me why God doesn't exist?
Bullshit. It does when you're talking to somebody like Darth, when Darth has basically said that the only God possible is the God of the Bible. This is just flat out dishonest what he's doing here.
Sure. I'm going to ask you a question right now that I know you won't answer. Can you tell me why the Hindu God doesn't exist?
The Hindu God doesn't exist because the one true God is the God of the Bible, and that negates the Hindu God.
Dude, that's fucking hilarious.
Okay.
He's so unself-aware. He literally just said the one true God that exists is the Christian God, so that negates the Hindu God. So if we're talking about all gods and Darth worldviews, there is only one. That's the only one we should ever be talking about. What the fuck?
And it's the only revelation that's possible. Everything else is just some kind of blinkered illusion or something.
How in the world does he not see that? What? That is so stupid. Literally, in 2 sentences, he contradicts himself.
Yeah. Yep. No. Like, those ones can't be because they lack the revelatory quality of the one true God.
Dude, this guy is
It's
worse
the only
than
one that's
Kent
possible.
Hovind.
Like, yeah. And it's weird because he's this bad about like theological stuff. He's this inconsistent.
If I was a masochist, okay, and I really wanted to sit down and do it, I guarantee you I could compile a series of Darth clips and make him argue against himself with contradictory claims.
Yeah.
I would love for somebody to do that, man. That would be hilarious.
Well, the Darth Dawkins debunk guy, he's kind of like did that with his website where you ask the Q&A things.
Jefferson, really quickly, you have somebody called Ultimate Judeo-Christian in your comment section. You might want to shut him down.
Who is he or she?
He's somebody that might say something that could get this stream shut down in the live chat.
That bad?
He's that bad. I mean, this guy's completely unhinged. He's not somebody that you want interacting with your live chat.
All right, he's done.
He just to give you a taste of the kind of crazy he is, he will sit in a Discord room all by himself, and I've joined, and then he's literally in there rambling off to himself. There's nobody there. He's not talking to anybody. He's in there by himself, just rambling.
Wait a minute. Is it this guy?
Yeah, it's Phil Almond.
Oh my God, I debated that dude.
Yeah. No, he says that he has sex with God in his dreams.
Oh, good Lord. He's really gotten worse. Yeah, he tried to make an argument.
He's completely fucking unhinged. He's not someone that you want interacting in the chat. He's not like, a menial troll like Warren. Warren's entertaining to a degree. But no, he's like Mad Hatter fucking insane.
Yeah. No, I mean, I knew he was a little bit, goofy the first time I talked. It was years ago. He challenged Math Pig to a debate. I ended up having a conversation with him, and he was just really weird. And then I saw him months later, and he was getting weirder. And anytime I see him pop up, it's like, holy shit. Yeah.
Yeah, no, like that's like it's one thing to argue with like cronies of Darth or parrots, but he's like severely mentally ill, and he's not someone that we want to like entertain. Because that's just like feeding into like an actual condition that he might be suffering from.
Yeah, that's good call. Yeah, let me get this playing again.
Okay.
Now, can you please tell me why God doesn't exist?
I don't see how if a Hindu person gave the exact reverse perspective, how that would be less valid than what you just said.
Well, we can discuss that momentarily, but that's a dodge to my question. Would you please tell me why God doesn't
I've already
exist?
answered it like four times.
No, yeah, you've given me non sequiturs. I have given you a rebuttal to what you've said. I pointed out that they are non sequiturs. Do you recall me saying several times that's a non sequitur and then explaining why it's a non sequitur? Do you recall that?
Yes, I recall you telling me that my answers were non sequiturs, Darth.
Wait, did you give me a counter rebuttal?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So what you've said so far are non sequiturs. What you said is God doesn't exist because human beings have faulty reasoning about him. Well, it doesn't follow. Kai Nielsen is an atheist philosopher, and he was.
God, for God's sake. Yeah, no, I was saying that about Atheist Junior being here. Oh, for God's sake. No, it was about the Kai Nielsen quote. Welcome, Atheist Junior. How you doing?
Salam alaikum, my brothers. I'm good.
So, I know exactly what's coming next for this where we left this off with Darth. It's going to be Kai Nielsen, who was selected by the Encyclopedia Britannica to write the entry for atheism. I don't know why he has to say that every time. It's like he's not. People accuse him of being on the script because he talks like he's on the script. Like he learns a factoid or two about one particular thing, and every time he brings it up as a reference, he has to mention those same two damn factoids every fucking time. He never switches it up.
Maybe that's his lover.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Good to have you here, though, Junior.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say I've been listening since pretty much the beginning, and so I was driving, and you guys, you're right that I am more into the science than philosophy, so I hope I don't drag the IQ quotient of the chat down.
You're fine, man.
Okay,
so like
you guys have been blowing my mind with what you've been saying. Sorry, I just wanted to say that.
A reasonable, honest person will always try to use an inference to the best explanation. Okay. When you interact with somebody like Darth, he's not interested in that. What he wants you to do is give an account for how you can literally just know anything, right? He starts at your capacity to reason and then gets into the substance of the conversation, but you never get past that initial gate. He gatekeeps reason from you, so you can't engage with him meaningfully. Now, like I said, I mean, there's people like me, like Jefferson, Jack Burton. We know how to cut through that shit and play his own game, and he hates that, and he will just completely like prevent us from engaging with him at all.
Yeah,
it's interesting that people that he recognizes like that, he just calls us trolls and bans us forever. And keeps his
Yeah, you guys are a lot more experienced, dealing with his arguments and all this. So I'm just happy to be learning from you guys, and and this is why, you know, I've had one other exchange with Darth like early in my channel, and you know, so I'm still learning. You know, I am I have been, you know, pretty open that I'm not somebody who really likes philosophy because I find it very confusing, and I like, you know, more grounded topics, but I'm learning from watching videos like this and having these discussions. So just thanks for having me on, and for even showing the video. So I'm flattered, honestly. So thank you.
Did you ever? Are you familiar with A.W. Tozer?
No, is that a
He's
a
he's a
brand of vodka?
No. He's a Christian
Okay.
author, but I like a lot of his stuff. He's a pretty sincere guy.
Okay.
I would recommend him to anybody who wants to like listen to honest Christian reasoning. But he has a really cool quote that I enjoy, which is that philosophy asks questions that we can never possibly answer, and science answers the questions we never thought to ask.
Wow. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned Alex Malpass, and his interaction with Darth is one of my favorite videos ever of, you know, somebody versus Darth Dawkins.
You ever seen his interaction with Graham Oppie?
I think I've seen some of it, but no, not the whole thing.
Graham Oppie skull fucked him, and it was really funny to watch.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I'm surprised because Darth really sucked up to Alex, you know, because he's you know, obviously he's a PhD professor, you know, but I love, you know, a clear communication style. I'm a big fan of that. I try to do that on my channel, and Alex is really good at that, you know, and yet he's a philosopher, like, you know, a real like professional at it. And like you said, he is like, Darth, I don't understand your question. Like, you know, when you know, nobody's like me talk to Darth and we say, I don't understand that, he just calls you stupid, you know. But if, like you said, if these top level guys are still like, what the fuck are you talking about? I think that just shows that he is intentionally obfuscating.
Yeah,
I'm not any kind of a philosophical heavyweight either. I'm just really good at recognizing bullshit.
yeah. My whole thing is. My whole thing isn't really the philosophy thing. It's just watching people like Darth Dawkins fail at communicating, like just basic human interaction. That was what kind of attracted me to him, to his style in the first place, because he was just so bad at, like, I mean, he was obsessed with winning these debates, and it's like you can't even succeed at your side of a conversation, which isn't something you have to like. You don't have to defeat the other person. You just have to hold up your end, and he couldn't do that. So. Yeah,
You want to talk to a philosophical heavyweight? Talk to some of my buddies like Detroyer and Nyclot. Those guys will blow you out of the water on philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nyclot's one of the most genuine people you'll ever talk to. He's awesome.
All right.
It's also pretty cool that he's like gorgeous and looks like a fucking Giga Chad, like legitimately the Giga Chad meme.
Oh, I'm into it then, because, you know, I'm bi, so I'm down.
Oh, there you go, man. Maybe maybe you get yourself a philosophy daddy there. Nyclot, if you're listening, shout out to you, buddy. Nyclot's an OG from the Pal Talk Yahoo chat days. Yeah, he and I have known each other.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, he's awesome. He's fun to talk to. We don't agree on everything. He is a theist, but his concept of theism is radically different than anything you've probably ever been exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I am just praying that we get far enough into the video to see some of near the end. So I won't say anything else. I'll let you guys get into it.
No. Hey, if you ever want to repay us for this, I mean, you're free to bring us on your channel, which has exceptionally more subscribers than we do.
Oh, I would love to. I would love to. We'll definitely set that up.
Dude, hit me up. I'm an attention whore.
Well, me too. So it takes one to know one.
Hey, I don't mince it, man. I admit I have an ego and I am an attention whore.
That's why we're on YouTube. That's why we're YouTubers.
I've been pestering Jefferson to let me on his stream for weeks.
Yeah, he hasn't really beaten around the bush about it either. It's just, pay attention to me. Like, what? No, like, send me a link sometime. Let's go. I don't care if you pay attention to me. I need somebody else to pay attention to me. Put me on your show. Like, all right.
Lucky, my Pal Talk username was Oh Man My Bad.
Oh man, my bad.
Yeah, I was pretty frequent on there under that username.
I like
Pal
that.
Talk is gone, right? Is it gone? Or
no,
is
it's active, but it's all the same fucking people from like 10 years ago.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all the OGs, man. It's fucking C Major is still there, Spaz Quester's still there. I think Palaterality left. Mouthy, oh god, Mouthy's still there. let's go on. Let's continue.
Was selected by the Encyclopedia Britannica to write the atheist entry in the Britannica.
It's like
He
I can
stated
see
in
the
one of his
future.
books, all of the reasons for God may fail, but it still might be the case that God exists. So to say that God doesn't exist because human beings had a desire to believe in God in the afterlife, or they have faulty reasonings about God, it doesn't follow from that God doesn't exist.
I did not
So-
say that humans have faulty reasoning. You did. I never said
No,
that.
you did.
No, you
Yes,
said
you did.
that. No, that was your
Okay.
description of my answer.
Okay.
I
All right, if you want to
specifically
deny,
said.
if you want to deny what you said before, that's fine. I'm not going to bicker with you over
Pause
that.
real quick.
That's shitty
Atheist
of him.
Junior. Okay, I'm gonna give you some real one advice. Okay.
Still there?
That
flag in a
was
particular word.
profound.
Yeah,
I heard,
or what you
I heard
said.
nothing. I heard nothing.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything.
It's they want to fight with you over the meanings of words because ultimately words are all tautological, right? They're just arbitrary strings of sounds and letters
No, actually,
that we use to describe things.
Xerxes, we didn't hear you. You blinked out for a bit there. Like you
Oh,
started.
okay.
yeah, I was making a joke. I was saying that
my
was so
bad.
profound.
But this is what I said to you: do not squabble with these people over verbal real estate. Okay. The words that you guys use, if you come to an impasse at what you mean by a particular word, just give it to them and pick a different word, because all they're going to do is try and fight with you over the meaning of this particular word, as opposed to addressing the substance of your actual viewpoint. So if he wants to fight with you about what an atheist means, or what this or that means, or what you actually said, don't squabble. Just say, okay, then I was mistaken. I actually meant this.
Okay. I agree.
Yeah. It's
And-
you save so much time by not squabbling over words with these people.
But I think it's shitty what he's done here too, because this is something I made this point multiple times in a video that I did yesterday, where he will try to set up these kind of closed-ended questions, and then what he'll do is he'll repeat back, and if you give a yes or a no, then he'll repeat back the way he worded the closed question, as if those are the words that you spoke verbatim. Like he gave you no choice but to say no or yes, and then he's like, okay, and then he repeats back all that verbiage back out, and he knows it's loaded up with lots of extra entailments, and then like, oh, so now you want to change your story? Like, I didn't say that. So I applaud Atheist Junior here for what he's doing. Like, I didn't say that. You said I said that. I didn't I didn't reach the conclusion that people are wrong about God, therefore God doesn't exist. Darth leapt to that conclusion and has been trying to project that onto Atheist Junior this entire time. Like, aha, what you're doing is a non sequitur. You can't say that it follows from that people, because people have can be mistaken about things, that means that those things couldn't in fact exist. Like,
yeah,
Atheist Junior was talking about his reasons for why he doesn't believe. So
right. And I wanted to just say, he's claiming that was my argument, but pay attention to how the words he used, because I called him out on this earlier. He says, just because humans are mistaken. And I says, you're presupposing that God exists. What do you mean mistaken? They're mistaken that God doesn't exist. How would that be the position of an atheist? How would that be my argument? That because people are wrong that God doesn't exist, because he does, that's why God doesn't exist? I mean, am I just confused, or is that? I mean, but I think I'm right to say that he's presupposing, because of course he is. It's what he does. But of course that wasn't my argument.
Yeah, it's just weird. But that's what he likes to do. He likes to.
Yeah, he just had me running in circles. I admit that I was very confused. He's good at what he does.
I think you did a good job there in catching that, because a lot of people don't catch that. They'll just kind of like, oh, okay. But this is one of those things where I think in this case, like, quibbling with him, at least to this point, like, it's one thing to, like, if he wants to get into like a semantic game, I totally agree with Xerxes. Like, don't even bother with that, because that'll take up 30 minutes, and he'll just, and he'll come to the verge of a stroke. Darth Dawkins will.
Right.
But this kind of thing where he's like, this is what you told me like 20 minutes ago. Like, I didn't tell you that. You assumed it did. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So slightly contradicting advice here. So, but what I'm going to gather is that it's okay to point out that maybe that's not what I said, but don't keep arguing on that point over and over again, because then you're just wasting your time. Does that sound okay? Okay. I can take that advice.
Because he's going to make himself look like a jackass.
Real quick, I have a question. Junior, is there like a timestamp you would like us to jump to? Because like, we've been on here for a little over an hour and a half, 2 hours now. Yeah, we started at 6, so we're almost 2 hours on, and we're only 11 minutes into the video.
Yeah, we'll probably have to wrap up. I'd kind of like to wrap up at around the 2-hour mark, so we're just about done. In fact, I think.
Is there anything you want us to jump to real quick?
How about just the last 5 minutes then? We'll just take the time we have left and do that. Okay. So it'd be 2 hours. How about that?
Yeah, phenomenal.
All right, let's go to show. Let's see. Here.
For brevity's sake.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, Shakespeare said wit. Brevity is the soul of wit.
Yep. Let's see.
Yeah. Just go to 26 minutes even.
This is where I have fun, is at the end.
All right.
I'm not bitching and moaning. I'm simply pointing out every time you respond, you're giving me a non sequitur.
I'm not bitching and moaning. His entire shtick is bitching and moaning.
You don't like my answer? Let's move on.
The last thing that you said was God does not exist because if God did exist, somebody would see him. Did you say that?
Yeah, and you said that's why leprechauns don't exist.
That's a non sequitur. That if a creator existed, that you would necessarily see him. If there was a creator, why would? Can you stop?
Position.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally Darth's entire worldview that if a creator existed, you would know he existed.
Yeah.
He literally tells you you're a liar when you say you don't know he exists.
Yeah, which is interesting. It's an interesting quibble to make. Like, oh, you're trying to say that it's necessarily the case that if a God exists, that you have to be able to see him. Like, my argument I'm making as Darth Dawkins is if there is a God and you know him, you have to know him because he's revelatory. Like, what the fuck?
That's the answer he gave me because I asked him, why don't leprechauns exist? And he says, because people would have seen them. And I said, right. I gave his answer back to him. He says, that's a non sequitur. Okay.
Good Lord. Interrupting me. I'm going to ask you a question right now. I'm really getting frustrated with you with your grotesque, immature behavior. How old are you, sir? I'm 61. How old are you?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Oh my God.
Okay, then stop acting like a 14-year-old.
Probably like 17.
What's wrong with 14-year-olds?
The projection.
Okay, see, you're proving my point right now. You sit there and you do this stupid atheist YouTube channel over and over and over again, and I'm asking you legitimate philosophical questions, and you are arguing with me like you're a 13-year-old at the cafeteria table. You are not dialoguing with me like you are an adult. You're bitching, you're whining, and then when I complain about your behavior, you tell me I'm bitching and whining. You, sir, are not acting like an adult.
Oh my God.
Okay, now I want you to explain to me. I want you to.
Yeah, he's gotten really triggered at this point.
The E is so rich in iron that it collapsed on itself. Oh my God. If you could tangibly manifest the irony in Darth's dialogue, you would add probably about 20 billion metric tons to the Earth's mass.
Yeah. Well, as Bart Simpson said, the ironing is delicious.
The air is salt, the ceilings are salt, everything is salt.
it's like I was gonna try to make a joke about the guy's wife and they gets turned to salt, but I couldn't think of the name. I whiffed that one. It's just don't look back and they get turned to a pillar of salt. That's Darth.
Here we go.
To explain to me, okay, in clear terms, that's not a non sequitur why God doesn't exist.
You have yet to calling my channel stupid.
You have yet to do so. I'm not going to apologize.
Apologize, Darth. I'm upset. You hurt my feelings.
Listen to me. Wow, you definitely have arrested development.
Yeah.
Great show.
I'm waiting for you to explain to me right now before everyone in the room. By the way, this is being recorded and it's going to be uploaded to YouTube. I want you to explain to me why.
Yeah, by Atheist Junior of all people. Imagine that.
That reminds me of my video called the second video I ever made was J Robin gets trapped and has like 6,000 videos. And at the end of the video, I told J Robin I was going to upload it. He's like, "You're not going to upload it. This is humiliating. This is humiliating for you." And then I ended the video right there and uploaded it.
I still haven't found where else this is uploaded on YouTube, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've only seen this from yours, so
yeah. That's an interesting way to threaten a YouTuber.
It takes Daz and Tom Rabbit a little while because they add their own flair to it.
Yeah,
true. I sent him the link though, so we'll see.
Would you not overtalk me? Because if I hear you overtalk me again, I'm going to server meet you. Now, I want you to explain to me right now
You don't say.
why God does not exist. That's
Wow.
not a non sequitur. Okay. Now, I want it in clear terms. God does not exist because, now you said there's no evidence, but you didn't defend the statement that there's no evidence. Did you defend the claim there's no evidence for God?
Can you show me any evidence?
Did you defend the claim that nothing is evidence for God?
I
think I just did.
I defended the
Yeah.
claim that there is no evidence, not that nothing
Okay.
is evidence.
Okay. What? No, sir. Either everything is evidence for God or nothing's evidence for God.
No,
Your
I don't
position is
accept that.
you
Jesus, that'll just
Bullshit.
holy shit. I always like as often as this old dude complains about the quote unquote atheist cliches. That right there, that Christian cliche is just, I think I've heard Ray Comfort use that one before in the past. Either everything's evidence for God or nothing is. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but
Christian
the
nihilist.
moment you try to fight within that dichotomy, they fucking change the subject. They have to hide behind the veneer of deism. And I like what Jack Burton said in the chat. You should pop that up there. The DD paradox that Darth is always full of shit, but somehow also always losing his shit.
Yeah,
He did put it on the screen, I think, already. But
Yeah,
like,
that's
I
hilarious.
I just like to be in front of this guy, you know, Darth or anybody, like, well, you know, if every, you know, well, everything's evidence for God or nothing is. Like, really? And like, yeah, just name something, and I'll show you how it's evidence of God. The Holocaust.
yeah. Well. Don't nobody clip that where of Jefferson saying the Holocaust and me just busting out laughing. Don't clip
Yeah,
that.
taken out of context, that will be bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. That was about owning an evangelical, not what you think.
But you know, I feel like if you ask him or anybody, when George W. Bush says you're either with us or against us, is that a false dichotomy? They probably say yes. And Darth should know about false dichotomies. Obviously, he does, and yet he says that. You know.
Yeah.
If you guys want a real fucking hair-pulling comedy show of a debate, okay, that does not involve Darth Dawkins, all right? And if Digital Hammurabi is still here listening, we tried to get something like this set up, but our schedules are not aligned. But I had a debate with a guy named Gavin Herleman on biblical slavery. Oh my fucking God. Jefferson, I would love for you and Digital Hammurabi, and even you, Junior, if you want to participate in an analysis of this. We'll cut out the best segments. It's an hour and a half long, so we would never get through it. It'd have to be like a 6-hour stream to get through the whole thing. But I would love for us to do that. Like, that way we can have the same fucking fun without having to give Darth any more attention than he deserves. Because Zen asked in the chat, you know, why do we give him so much attention? And I agree with you, Zen. I don't think we should, but it is funny, and it does.
At least I'm getting
generate
attention
views.
too, so you know.
We're all getting attention. That's
No,
Daisy,
I would be happy to come back on though. This has been so much fun, and a time when I can come back on maybe from earlier from the beginning, because this has been so much fun. Thank you guys for having me. Seriously.
yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, thanks for coming on, and thanks for the video.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, this is awesome. This is awesome. And I appreciate you for bringing me up here too, Jefferson. I mean, this was fun. This was a nice little catharsis.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you. You know that I've debated Gavin Herleman like 2 or 3 times, right?
Was he wearing
I
pants?
did not know that.
I don't think he was wearing pants for the second debate. The first one, I
Okay.
think he was. I think that was before he started having whatever his hemorrhoid problems were.
I had no idea who he was when he engaged me
he's a
in
trip.
my back channel and asked me to, because I don't really use Clubhouse all that much. So anytime I look at my back channel, it's like a once in a blue moon. And he had messaged me like, "Hey, I'll debate you over slavery." And I was like, "Cool." And like, he set it up. He got his own moderator, and worst fucking moderator I've ever had, by the way. Not that he was like particularly biased. He was biased, but he wasn't paying attention. Like he wouldn't call time on Gavin. I'm like, yeah, I was like, yeah, I want to stick to the time constraints and go into the closing. Oh, you're rage quitting. You're rage quitting. You're rage quitting.
Yeah.
Jefferson,
Oh my God.
do you mind if I do my shameless plug just before you guys wrap it up?
No, we can probably wrap it up here. I mean, it's interesting that we cut to the last 5 minutes and he's still asking the same question. He's still badgering you with the God does not exist because. So if you guys are okay with that, we can wrap it up here. I've got Andrew Cummings in the back room. He wanted to ask something to me and Xerxes once we go offline. So I kind of like to wrap it up here, but yeah, go ahead.
Because I just know you said the 2-hour mark, and I saw that we're there. So
yeah, we've gone over.
Yeah. So as you guys can see on screen, I'm very close to 7,000 subs. If anybody in the chat or watching this, saw this and you're not subscribed, I noticed you appear to not be subscribed, Jefferson. So maybe ameliorate that and help me get a little bit closer. And thank
sub.
you.
I'll sub,
Thank you.
buddy.
And also I have a Twitter and Patreon. Both of them are just /AtheistJR. And I recently got banned on Twitter or blocked by Matt Dillahunty. So I've been celebrating that all weekend. And, you know, go check it out.
Matt
Throw me a
Dillahunty
follow.
blocked you for?
I mean, that would require a whole stream to itself, I think. But it's kind of a long story. But, you know,
I do want to mention the human opinions. Can we get a link to that, Jefferson? Actually, this is linked. Atheist Junior is linked in the description. So if you click on that, that will take you right to his channel. If you want to subscribe, and King Xerxes is also linked. You know, his @ is mentioned in there for anybody that's interested. He's mentioned in the description below. So, but I think Atheist Junior should be in the title and in the description. So, for anyone who's interested in the link to that.
But Jefferson, if you want to do that, man, I would love to do that. I've been waiting for somebody to pull me up to do like a debate review on that since it happened, because it is just like comedy gold. Okay, there are so many hilarious sound bites.
I could probably, like, coming up, I'm going to have some time off over the holidays. If you've got any time off, or if you've got some time, or like on an upcoming Sunday, where we do, like, I can do one of my old fashioned like 3-hour long ones. If you want to just sit there and like swap war stories about giving, I would be more than happy to.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, it'd be hilarious. We could pull up my my debate with him. I mean, it's just so funny. Like, at this point, I've pretty much exhausted my desire to interact with people on the topic of biblical slavery, because I also had an impromptu debate with Praise I Am on the subject, and that was a fucking disaster. I mean, it always like blows my mind. It's bewildering how far these people have to stretch to get out of the Bible condones chattel slavery.
Yeah.
Daisy, it's on my channel. You can just like go to my channel and then look at I scroll down quite a bit. It was in like March or April, and it's just Gavin Hurleyman versus King Xerxes. Does the Bible condone slavery? I'm sure Jefferson can link it. I mean, I don't have access to the chat, so if Jefferson wants to do that,
let me try here.
I
think Mark Reed went live too.
I don't know who that is.
He's from Australia, and he's kind of gotten started recently, kind of going after I think he's debated Gavin Hurleyman at least once too, and he had a conversation with Darth Dawkins a little while ago.
Yeah,
I did a review of that, and then had kind of a conversation with him. He's a nice guy.
I like how the consensus is that everybody dislikes Matt Dillahunty. I always thought I was alone in that opinion. I've never really cared for the guy.
I don't dislike him or like him. I don't really like his approach to a lot of stuff. He's made some good points and stuff in the past. I remember when my brother was starting to get into YouTube and kind of atheism stuff, he would tell me about, he would watch videos from like the atheist experience and stuff online, and then he'd tell me about, like, different exchanges that he saw in there, and I was never really interested in watching it. Every once in a while I'd see him, but I didn't really care to follow it. But lately, he seems to have kind of attracted like there seems to be this kind of like backlash against him, which I don't know if it's deserved or not. I just don't know enough about.
Are you doing anything this Friday, Jeff?
This Friday, coming up for Christmas, probably not, to be honest, other than cooking. But I might be.
Well, because I get my new computer on Thursday, and I'm going to have my buddy help me set up a live stream so I can do a live stream either Thursday or Friday. And I'm going to give a big shout out to the guy who bought it for me. And I was actually also thinking, for those of you who are interested, perhaps, of doing a reading of the night before Christmas. I used to do that on an audiobook website for people, ASMR. So people liked it. Daisy, the Scott Clifton is Theoretical Bullshit is his YouTube channel. Please, I encourage everybody to go watch his stuff. He is probably, if you think I'm good at debating, holy crap. Okay. All I'm doing is lifting his points and putting them into conversations.
Yeah, Clifton is he might be the Antichrist. I mean, it's kind of interesting that he doesn't do more of this kind of stuff.
Well, he's an actor.
He's an actor. Yeah. He gets his job requires a lot of hours. So I thought it was
Yeah.
interesting that he got involved in this in the way that he did. Back because I think
Oh,
I
yeah.
think he said it like 9 years ago or something like that. So a lot of those.
Oh, no. He's been doing this 15. Okay, because he's been on ever since like YouTube started in 2008. If you go back to his earliest videos, they're from 15, 16 years ago.
Oh, damn. Really? Okay.
Yeah. And holy shit, was he rocking the 2008 look. He looks like the love interest of every fucking 2008 Hallmark movie.
Or like or the star / extras in an NECW show. Yeah.
Exactly. He's
Yep.
a very pretty man. I will
Yes.
admit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jason. Oh shit, this guy? Yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Oh, Benghazi, thank you for putting that up there. Here is Jeff debating Gavin. Yeah, that's one of them. But yeah, if you want to do that, well, yeah, let's talk about that offline, and we'll sign out of here because we've gone over a little bit, and Andrew's kind of waiting, so let's wrap this up. So again, thanks to Xerxes. You got anything else that you want to plug? Any other upcoming videos or anything coming up?
No, yeah, like I said, I'm intending to do a stream at some point this weekend once I have a computer that's capable of doing that.
Okay.
Peter and I were trying to set one up, like help me set up a stream, but my computer is just fucked. It just can't do it. Like it's the little engine that could. It's struggling as it is. I mean, I am not kidding you when I tell you it's completely broken. There is nothing attaching it to the base except a tiny little cable. It is literally holding on by a thread right now.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, it's time for a new one. Well, I'm glad you got a new one. That's why.
Hey,
okay.
Grim, I agree with you. I should have 10,000 subs, but I don't. I should also have $1 billion, but I don't. I'm still fighting with Elon Musk over that. I will get him to give me $1 billion. I just wonder how much of his ego I have to stroke before I do it. Maybe I can track him down with the Elon jet thing.
Yeah, do it. Pitch him an idea for like a solar flyer.
Hey, guys! Don't be hating on Mad Slick. I actually like him. He's a nice guy. He's just got bad ideas. All right, but he's a remarkably good storyteller. I don't know if you guys have ever heard him tell stories, but when he's in a chat room not talking about religion, he's a really neat guy to talk to.
Yeah, any of
He's
us
got a lot of life experience.
Yeah, when he talks, any anecdotes and stuff, he's actually pretty good. I kind of wish it's kind of weird because he actually has to like cut like about 70% of that charisma as soon as he starts getting into the apologetics mode. It's kind of interesting. Like it's like I just want to kind of like tap him on the shoulder and be like, you notice what just happened there? Like you're telling me a story about you going to the grocery store to pick up like milk, and it was infinitely more captivating and interesting than you talking about Jesus. Something's wrong here, man.
No, he gave us. He was in here. He gave us a description of what he thought hell was like, and it was really enamoring, actually, to listen to. Like it actually painted a really vivid, horrifying picture. He related it to him being in a car accident where he severely injured his head, and he woke up in pure darkness, and he couldn't remember anything. And the most significant thing about it was that he couldn't even remember his own name. He had no identity. He's in pure darkness. He's in pain, constant pain. He doesn't understand what's happening to him. And that was his description of hell. And I was like, holy fuck, this dude would be a phenomenal narrator.
Yeah, I
like
kinda,
Dante, watch out. You got a challenger.
Well, with that, folks, I don't really have anything to plug yet either because I don't really have anything planned. I might be going live. I might get another video in this week, but if things change, we got some bad weather coming in where I'm at, so maybe not. So
no, it sucks.
Yeah. So maybe I'll be on tomorrow night. I may not, but we'll just see. But with that, folks, take it easy. Have a good night. Xerxes, thanks for being here. Special thank you to Atheist Jr. for showing up and for providing this lovely video for us. Yeah, everybody go check out his channel. Subscribe if you like it. Watch the rest of, well, there's not too much really else to watch. It's just Darth Dawkins demanding Atheist Jr. answer the question, God does not exist because. But if you're into more torture, by all means, help yourselves.
All you masochists.
Yeah, go do it. But with that,
Merry
we're going to say
to all and to
Merry
all
Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah. Have a tip-top tet and a Kwasi Kwanzaa and all that, and we'll see you all.
Happy Chris Mahana Kwanzaa.
Yeah, that too. All right, see you later, folks. We are out of here. Oh, and again, another special shout out. Thank you, everybody in the live chat, moderators especially, and thank you all again for the super chats. It's always very generous. You guys are great. Happy holidays. See you later.